Arian, let go.
Hey. All right, guys. It is Saturday, October 19th, 2019. You are listening to Disclaimers by Ed Johnston. And Ed, because I got a madhouse over here, you better take it over quickly.
All right, thank you. We want to thank everybody for joining us again tonight. We appreciate passing out our knowledge to everybody and, taking other people's knowledge and working with that. And so we're passing it out because we have to work with each other. And that's the one thing that people got to realize. It's us, not them. And people always say, well, we got to do this and we got to fight them their way. Well, we do fight them their way, and that's the Elected and Public Employees Union. But, the main point is that we're supposed to have rights, so you have to file for your rights. And this is the one thing that, I've been doing this and having conversations with people all week on this. And I ask people, one of the first questions I ask dealing with the circumstances is, do you know your rights? Do you know your bloodline? Do you know how many generations their family are in this country? And that's the one thing that people have got to comprehend, that it really comes down to your bloodline that gives you rights, not privileges. And especially if you're native bloodline, and this goes all the way back to 1866. And people say, well, you have to be Indian. And it's like, no, that's not the terminology. Even the 14th Amendment says you don't have to be Indian. Remember, the 14th Amendment is administrative rule of the new corporation that was done by the British government. And everybody keeps getting on me, Ed, why do you keep going after the British government? And it's like, they're your courts, your Article I tribunal courts. It's like, it says it right in the filings of the courts. I read their paperwork, and so I'm quoting with the stuff right out of their paperwork. So that's the point, is really realizing what's going on. And so I've developed some new information that I'll be bringing out further out here eventually, but it's like that I'm realizing that you got to file on the man or woman who claims they own the copyright of the stage. And so once you find out the man or woman who owns the copyright, now you get to go after the individual that's saying that it has the lawful or legal authority to write you a citation, steal your home because you're not paying their administrative tax fees, which I've never done. I'm fighting them on that right now. And even though that I've had a conversation with one of the tax guys from my county, and I nailed him on the deal that, even in the state of Oregon, that you don't have to pay taxes on manufactured home. And I said, I want to know who's put the manufactured home in the circumstances. And I have a right to know. And, his answer is coming back to me is just, everybody pays taxes. If we don't pay it, we're just going to shoot you. That's basically what he told me, that, they murder and rape, rob, and murder for their jobs. And we all know that. So I went after him and I said, well, if I have to do this, then how come you're not responding to my deal? And he goes, well, we're the law. We don't have to do what you say. And see, that's the point problem, people, that these people say they don't have to work for the public, but they can rape your children and murder you. So it's like, when are men going to be men again instead of being little girls? This is the saddest part that we're living, because native law, we have rights. And even in the Section 2 of the United States Constitution says Indians and natives cannot be taxed. Now, the state of Oregon does have a site that I found, it says property tax exempt for natives. It doesn't say Indian, it just says tax exempt for natives. But the form is not on the page, so I'm still trying to find it, but it's on the structure because they're supposed to give the natives non-tax. You're not supposed to pay taxes. And even in the original structure of the state of Oregon with the Treaty of 1846 and the Mission of 1959, because the Constitution, the state of Oregon has 3 treaties. First one of 1846 says that we do not pay taxes. Nobody pays taxes in the Western Hemisphere. And that's Idaho, Montana, Washington, California, and Oregon. We're supposed to be 100% exempt for taxes under that treaty. And then you have the Emission Act of 1859 that says the same thing. And then 3 months after that, you have the Corporation Act that comes into place. But it doesn't say you have to pay taxes, just leaves it out. So that's what the state and Cape Brown is going on, and that's the one thing that I'm surprised that Cape Brown's recall was a few hundred. They said a few hundred signatures short, which is bullshit because when they filed the Cape Brown recall, I filed the first one. I filed it lawfully. That's part of the reason why they stole my files out of my house, because I had an original file, because you had to autograph it. You couldn't check a box on a deal. You had to prove that you were a native in this country and you had the rights to recall a corporation member. Remember, they're elected and public servants. So you have a right to recall these people and put them in prison. And they don't want you to know this stuff. They don't want you to realize that you could actually put these people in prison yourself. You don't need to go to the Supreme Court and play this game. But the thing is that you have to have so many natives file the criminal charges. And they don't want you to know this. And that's the bottom line. I've been fighting that for some time. Excuse me. And so it's just disturbing that we go through this because they know it. And with Cape Brown's recall, technically the original fixtures, because I know when I filed mine in April, just 2 weeks before Mike Cross filed his, and Michael Cross, good job. Glad to see you approved a lot of stuff. And, yeah, you deserve a hell of a pat on the back for what you've been doing. But anyhow, the bottom line comes down to is that they said he was a couple hundred signatures short for 292,000 signatures he needed to get. But the original structure of Oregon to recall the governor is 229,000. See, they raise this stuff on it, and I try to explain to people that they were doing this, and nobody wants to listen when you're explaining to them. And when they do this, you have to file on them right then, and that way you can cap it. But nobody wants to listen. Everybody's thinking that they're gods for some crazy, stupid reason. They know better. And it's like, no, you got to read the paperwork. It's like with the native structure. You got to read the paperwork. Natives don't stand up for themselves. Most of them don't. Most of them just go, well, I don't know. I just can't believe it. I can't trust it. Well, that's the saddest point because I don't know what you're smoking, but you ain't smoking anything that has intelligence in it. This is the structure that we're going through. And so when you file on these mothers, you got to file the criminal charges. And I get people all the time that tell me, stay away from certain structure or religion. And it's like, okay. But see, you're missing the point. Religion is controlling your life. And so when people say, stay away from religion, it's like, what are you scared of? The truth that you're lying? Because most people use religion as an excuse. It's like saying I'm a drug addict and alcoholic. Oh, I got a program, forgive me. No, I don't forgive drug and alcoholics because if you're a drug and alcoholic, that means you're not responsible and you're a jackass. Because there's no such thing as a drug and alcoholic because that's created for 501c3 so government can write off you on their programs or write off the circumstances of the program to guarantee their jobs. Because if you're claiming that and if you're on the system, you get a counselor, and so that counselor has to be paid. So they build that. Yes, your birth certificate is a straw man account. I argue with people on that all the time, and I've got the federal laws on it. And I try to explain it. Executive Order 2040 was written up at $630,000 per birth certificate at the time. But technically, that is the $630,000 that is supposed to be guaranteed to lawful bloodline natives, so we're not paying our bills. Water, electricity, that's under House Resolution 192. And so this is all covered in the structure, and this is the structure that's under the Constitution that says natives are not supposed to pay taxes. And when I go into hospital and people go, well, Ed, how do you handle this stuff? I go in, and when they send their administration to me, we need to register you. We need your Social Security number. I'm under duress. I never say the word stress. Stress is a legal document terminology. That means stress that says you're not responsible. I need some psychological mind-altering pills when you use the word stress. Okay? I'm going to step out of the movie, watch the production, and learn the real points of real life. So the rest means, and if you don't know what it is, look it up. The rest means I'm under attack by my elected and public employees. The government's trying to take what's mine. That's what the rest means. So when they're stealing from you, the wording, it's the major point that people don't comprehend. Words and wording is so valuable. Excuse me. It's so valuable because the wordings mean what they mean. It's like, people say, oh, you got a vehicle. No, I have a covered wagon. Because covered wagons were never charged tax on. Vehicles, they started doing that in the 1930s because when they started issuing driver's license, or they didn't issue driver's license until 1940 when the Administration Act went through. Prior to that, in New York City, when they started putting out what they call, they wanted to know how many drivers were on the road. So they issued a paper that, you're driver 1, you're driver 2. And so nobody ever signed anything to be a driver. They just want to know how many, their corporation vehicles were on the road. And that really came from Ford. So all this stuff matters. So when you step out and you start looking about what, why, and how does this affect me, this is how it affects you. So if you don't file your rights to prove your lawful bloodline native going back to at least 1866, if you are an immigrant that came into this country, all right, 5 generations from the point that your great-great-great-great-grandfather came into this country. That's the way it works. I mean, we got people that are running for office that are not even, legal to run for office because if you read the Constitution and the treaties of each state says that you have to be 5 or more generations to run for office. You cannot be elected a public official if you're not native. But democracy, this democratic stuff is crazy. And Trump just put out a new T-shirt that I thought was wonderful, fighting for my rights. And, it says, everybody says, foreign and domestic. Well, the new T-shirt says foreign and Democrat. So, I mean, it's like, and this is a fact. And the Democrats are going, oh, we got to save our democracy. If you don't know what democracy, the word democracy means, please look it up. Democracy means I'm allowed to rape your children, murder your wife, steal your assets. And the cops won't do anything. That's what democracy means. Democracy is rape, rob, and pillage. That comes from your religious books. But nobody pays attention because everybody wants to interpret these books instead of reading sometimes what the words mean. So when it comes down to protecting your family, file your rights. Make sure it's filed in the city and county registration. File it with the local newspapers. Maybe they might write an article on you. It's possible. I mean, I know that the papers in my state, stopped writing articles on me because when I proved that you didn't need a hunting and fishing license, and I proved it by their own court cases, that's when they started panicking on me. Because, like I said, like I've always said, they wrote it, we quote it. I quote it. And then they wrote the administrative rules. I quote their administrative rules because that's go by the treaties first and the Constitution. The treaties are what is the lawful structure that guarantees the Constitution. It's administrative rules. Because the Constitution is still a British contract. And that's the one thing that people don't see, how all this ties right into the British government of these contracts. Each state has a contract with the British government and that starts realistically before the Civil War happened. Prior to that, there was no contracts in the 48 states. The 48 states, everybody ran their own life and had to deal with them protecting themselves. But that's the point with the native treaties is that, that's the only thing that we have to save our butt on is proving your bloodline and then finding out who is the copyright of the state, who owns the copyright of the state. Because once you find who owns the copyright, then you can file the criminal charges on that man or woman and go after to have them indicted. And that's what I've got going on right now in my circumstances, and I will get some of that publicized here in the next, shortly I'll get some of that publicized. And so that is the one thing that, you've got to pay attention to what's going on. And then, I just went through the deal a week ago Friday. I ended up calling an ambulance because I started suffocating almost to death again because I have severe medical issues, lung and heart failure and stuff. And so when I called for an ambulance, SWAT shows up. Remember, I'm just in a little town of, 3,500 people, and my county's, 60,000. But any county that has over 50,000 people in it, they have a SWAT team that they've produced and put into their local structure because they all got federal funding. So, and that's where they got all these military equipment when they went to Afghanistan and all these other countries that started doing this after the 1980s, and the so-called war on drugs, the fraud on that one, so we can rape, rob, and pillage your children and come in your home and steal your assets because you found a joint in your home. Yeah, good thing that Trump passed that one, that they can't kill you for a joint. Well, some of them are still getting killed for a joint and assaulted, but even though hemp is lawful, not legal. And that's one thing I did prove to Congress by their own administrative rules. It goes back to the 1937 Marijuana Stamp Act. That's the whole point. It was a fraud. They couldn't put it in. They couldn't even put a structure in that says you couldn't have cocoa leaves or cocoa plants. And they know it because you have the right to your medication. It's called tribal. It is the structure that goes back to the family's and heritage that was kept us alive all these generations. But everybody says, oh, Western medicine is bad for you. Well, I have a disagreement with that because if it wasn't for Western medicine, I wouldn't be alive right now. So, it's looking at how the system works and who you got that is honoring their oath of servitude. And remember, all medical physicians and doctors and nurses are supposed to be registered themselves under the 1938 Foreign Registration Act because they are foreigners that are getting paid by the system off your birth certificate strawman account, or they're writing it off on their 1099 form. And that's the point, that when you do pay your water, electricity bill, you pay any court fines, do a 1099 form. 1099 form, yes. File it with them. And they're going to say, well, we don't need that. No, I want this certified and stamped because you want to be able to prove that income they got. And then with that one, once you got that certified by the clerk, you can sit there and file that with the Department of Justice and then take a form called the 4506 Form A, and that is for nonprofit corporations that they have to report their income. If they don't report their income, by law, they're shut down. And they do that. There are laws that they are doing that, and they're following through with this stuff. And the only reason why they're doing it today is because Trump's in office. If Trump was not in office, shit, man, people would be more shot in the street by the Democrats than you could imagine. But they do that because of birth certificate bond, because it's like me and Dave, we filed with the coroner for Ohio, and through that from the West Coast to the East Coast, and I filed in my area too, that we wanted to know if we were alive or dead. Because that way they have to prove that we're alive. And people say, oh, your birth certificate has that. No, your birth certificate is a registration number for the British banks. And that's called the World Debt Note that they call it, that says that the country is under national debt. Look the term of national up for once in your life. National is not American. It's a British term. National debt is what the British government owes the world, basically owes we the people under the Bankruptcy Act of the United States Incorporation. Because if you're a corporation, you have no rights. And that's the one thing that when you look up even corporation structure, who's the founder of the corporation, they're liable. And the board members. So, for example, what I filed in the county just a couple weeks ago, and I'm getting ready to file this new one, is that the mayor and city council are the liable party because they're the heads that make the city administrative rules. So by doing that and destroying people's constitutional rights and have them shot and stolen, their property stolen, like what they robbed my house, I love that because my neighbors are telling me, oh, the cops were all over your house when you were in ICU. And I'm like, oh, cool, great. Anybody wants to sign, work this complaint with me? And everybody's in my town, my city, is going, no, we don't want nothing to do with it because we're not losing our jobs. We're not losing our homes for you. Hey, the great American religious ways, So that's the one thing that gets to me about it, that, they watch people get raped and shot, and then everybody turns their back and turns their head because, that way they don't have to deal with it. Because they think if they bury their head in the sand, it's going to go away when it, eventually catch up to somebody in their family. And then when it does, everybody wants to do something about it, but they don't want to defend, their neighbor today. So when it comes down to it, this is the problem we have. So when they're passing these administrative rules, it's like I still can't believe that, when Kate Brown, and I try to explain this to people back with Kate Brown, when she changed the numbers on the election department, but nobody wants to listen to the truth. Everybody's off in their own old path, and then when the shit hits the fan, and then all of a sudden when it affects you, then you want to do something about it. I just went through that with a couple people this week. I said, why didn't you file this last month? Why didn't you do that? Oh, I prayed to God, I expect this to happen, and it was going to be forgiven. Did you file the paperwork on it? No. That's the point. You can't sit there, and then I always love it when people say, well, I talked to the clerk, or I talked to the public pretender. And it's like, that's called hearsay evidence. It's inadmissible in the court system. Do you have a contract? Do you have anything in writing that proves what you said? Do you have anything in writing of the conversation? Even when you have a conversation, write it down, email it to the people involved so that way there's a record of it. Because otherwise, if you have nothing, it's hearsay. It doesn't exist. If you have something that either you could rebuttal or they can rebuttal that you're protecting yourself, that's what has to be done. And it amazes me how people don't see how simple our system really is. I mean, this thing has been written, and it goes back to the treaties, because the treaties actually state, that we have rights, natives. If you're an immigrant, you have privileges. Immigrants have no rights, period. And I find it interesting how all these immigrants and everybody's out there writing these letters and saying, I have rights, and, my grandfather came from whatever country it is, and so we have rights. I was born on this soil, so I have rights. No, you don't have rights when you're born in this country unless you're native. 5 or more generations. That was done by the Dred Scott case. Nobody reads the court cases. That's the saddest thing about it. People don't read the stuff. They just go by sound bites. They don't study. That's the problem. That's why I always recommend a movie called Interstate 60. Because that movie, Interstate 60, sure explains a lot. How your court system works compared to what you think it does. And that's the one point. Most people think, but they don't know. They're not filing. They're not getting out there doing stuff. They're not fighting for their families. That's the saddest part. Nobody's fighting for their families. So when it comes down to the circumstances of what, why, and how, it's your responsibility. You can't sit there and go, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. You have to protect your family, your bloodline. And if your family's not on board, well, then you got to take a walk. Because you cannot put your livelihood in that hand for them to, to screw you over. Because, that's what people do. It's sad. It's really sad that, who do you trust? How do you do this? Who do you, what's your circumstances? Most people don't get that point of how to protect their bloodline. And it's up to you to protect your bloodline. That's the point. If you don't protect your bloodline, you have no future. So when it comes down to the structure that, we the natives have rights, that means you have to file for them. Because when you go to these kangaroo court systems, these administrative court systems, And, you know, people go, well, it's like, what are you doing? And if you don't, like I said, it's not in paper. So if people say, like I said, I'm going to go back to the birth certificate. I have birth certificates. A birth certificate is a registration number from the Secretary of State to the Vatican that says you are a tax write-off for the government. And if you ever read what the federal government is, if you ever read and look up federal government, you'll find out the federal government is the Queen of England. See, it's just that simple. Federalist, federal government. It's in the Webster Dictionary. You just type it up in Black Law Dictionary. It comes up. Federal government, the British government. Simple. So it's knowing what country you have status in. And that is the main point. Do you have status? Are you native? Are you an immigrant? So, I mean, and that's the point. If you're not filing that you're native and standing up that you have a right, not a privilege, because it's like Kate Brown in 2006 when they went after my family and, you know, went after destroying me and all this stuff. And trust me, I mean, I've been through this for 20 years. They filed criminal charges on me. They tried to put me in federal prison, and I'm still here. And that's what I know. It shocks people, you know, but it's like, and it shocks even Kate Brown because I mean, I still, you know, I mean, like I said, I've been dead so many times, legally dead, and so, and I'm still here, and so they're freaking out because it's like when I came to the last time, I could hear Kate Brown just cussing up a storm. Yeah, I can't explain that unless you've been through something like that and you can hear what somebody else is doing. But it's like, you know this stuff. And so when it comes down to it, you have to file your interest. You have to file your structure. So when it comes down to knowing who runs the state corporation, knowing who runs the state insurance fund, that's your responsibility to know who's running the insurance fund. And like I said, I've got a videotape, including with uninsured motorist funds, that we're not supposed to pay that. It's already covered. And Representative Senator Roblin has explained to me basically how the Democrats stole the money. And that's what I'm saying. These guys are stealing the money, pocketing the money, and playing this game on your expense. So when it comes to being native, and that's the one thing that I bring to the table here, is I'm going to read some more of the structure on Indians don't pay taxes. Natives don't pay taxes. So, and I post this up too, and if you want a copy, and I'll put this up too on the YouTube video tonight again. But Indians are non-taxed is still valid. Okay, and this goes to United States law. And then it goes to the treaties called, you know, the Constitution. And this goes back to the I.J. and Tyson Tim's ruling, the Eighth Amendment. See, when it comes down to it, you're not supposed to pay fines because under House resolution, they're supposed to be paid for. You're actually just supposed to, when you go in for, because they're misdemeanors and there is no crime for a misdemeanor because you didn't cause personal property damage. So they're supposed to just hand you a paper and you're supposed to just sign it and walk out the door and have a merry day. But instead, they want to make sure you're paying in federal debt notes because then that way in federal debt notes, you're making the income and bankrupting this country, and that's what they're trying to do with the police departments, is use the police departments to bankrupt this country. You got to remember, your police departments do not work for you. The Supreme Court has definitely stated that more than once, that the police department is not there to protect you at all. They're not there to protect your children. They're not protecting your dog. And so, and then this comes under the United States Constitution under Article 1, Section 2. I mean, like I said, this stuff is already in the Constitution and the treaties. They put it in there to protect us. And the point is for us to read this stuff to know what, why, and how it is to protect us. And if you want to look at it, one deal, it goes back to, Tim and Tibbs versus Indiana case. And like I said, I'll get that posted up so you can read this stuff, so that way you have it in your hands. And also, too, if you're paying income tax, it violates the Fifth Amendment, because if you give out your Social Security card or number or anything, that's under 42 USC, what is that, 408. Even under the Social Security Act, if you give somebody your Social Security number, it's a federal crime. Social Security number is basically what you're supposed to use that number under House Resolution 192 if you're native to write off your bills, your water, electricity, car insurance. You know, when you register your vehicle, you're supposed to sign a form for that, and that way it's already paid for, that you're not supposed to use the federal debt notes to keep putting the country in debt. And that's what the police departments do. They want to bankrupt this country. Yeah, remember, the police department, as the Supreme Court has stated many, many times, that they do not work for you. They are private contractors. They are private policy holders. So, and everybody keeps going, well, they have a guaranteed Constitution right. No, they don't. They are personally liable with their home and assets. And in Connecticut, the federal judge came out and made it a public deal, and I posted this up 5 years ago, that came out to the military and the law enforcement of the state and said, make sure you have no assets in your name. And if you don't have somebody put it in your dog's name. That's exactly what the federal judge stated. Because now, that way, if they get sued, they're not going to lose their home and assets to you, because if they put in their dog name, you can't sue the dog. Okay? And they know this stuff, because they, and that's the point. They get around the system because they wrote the system. And that's the point, that we have to look at how we have to get around the system by filing on them and doing our diligence to make sure that our public employees honor their oath of servitude under Title 5. That's Title 5, USC. Can't remember that one off the top of my head. I'll give them to it. But don't forget, anytime you file paperwork under Title 18, 3771, you are the victim, the criminal victim. So you have to file that you are the victim. You are the injured man or woman. If you don't file that you are injured, you're not going to get anywhere in a court case. Now, they do let some of these court cases slip through because they have to make sure it looks good for the general public. But that's what I'm saying. When you file under administrative rules and file on the property or the copyright, the property owner, because every city and county has a copyright. It's like the mayor, like I said, the mayor and the city council. They're responsible. They're the copyright owners of the city when they're putting these administrative rules locally. Even when they're following the state administrative guidelines, they're still liable. Mr. Cross, Rod Cross from the city of Toledo, and I told him after my house was robbed by the police department, I said, okay, you guys did that. You're still liable. He goes, I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, I said, it's simple. You are the mayor and the city council. You're the corporation members. You are liable. And he's going, and he's laughing on the phone at me, and it's like, Rod, you know me 25 years. I never bullshitted you in 25 years, and that's when he stopped laughing. Because he knows. So it's like, and I will get that copy out so people can read how to do it. Now, I got the other one out, what I filed on the city of Toledo, dealing with their nonprofit, because their police department is a nonprofit registry. And that's the one thing that you need to look on these nonprofits, the city address as well as the P.O. box. And technically, in a nonprofit, they're supposed to have technically a physical address. P.O. boxes, they cannot, because remember, the post office is, what do they call that? Oh, the forts. Because the post is a fort that used to be a military fort that came across this country under administrative rules. That's why it's a post office. And so that's the one thing that people got to realize, and that's trading with the business, and that's under Brady versus United States, 397, U.S. 742 at 48/1970. And see, that is the one thing that is so apparent when you write these things in, and people say, well, I don't write this in, I just write my letters, I don't need to put the administrative rules in, I don't need to put that in or this in. That's up to you. But I do it myself because when they try to come after me, I've got it there. What are they going to do? Argue with the structure that they've written? So you want to make sure that you're using their words against them. And once you realize that you're using their words against them, that's when you have clout. Because what are they going to do? Go after themselves? That's the point that you got to realize that these people will do anything in their power to take your home, to take your children, because it's money for them. And I got a video that I'll be putting out on economics coming up because it's interesting. And I put out one last month. It was a 4-hour video dealing with Florida. And it applies to all the states. And this is the point that people have got to realize how, what, why, and how this works. Because it's your responsibility that comes down to it. It's your family, your bloodline, your children. So if you're not protecting your children, what are you doing? This is the scariest part that we have going on. Because nobody's protecting their children. Because you register them in a state, and then you got the school district comes back and says that you need to get your kid vaccinated for. Well, then if they're saying that to you, you want an affidavit from the hospital, and you want an affidavit from the teachers involved and the teachers union that says they're liable. Don't obey these threats. I've been threatened. I've had guns to my head. I've been shot at. I've been through all this crap. Yes, it's unrest. It's unfortunate, and that's the way life is. But, see, if we had people that were standing up in this country that were being Americans instead of foreign agents for some foreign country, we wouldn't have the problems we have today. But that's the problem. We've got these problems because people don't stand up. Because people think, I just bury my head in the sand and it'll just go away. I don't know why people live in so much fantasy in this country today. It's just amazing that people live in such a fantasy world. It truly is. I just cannot fathom some of the stuff that I read, some of the stuff I witness, or some of the stuff I watch on MTV videos. Not MTV, but YouTube videos that come up. And so there's a lot of things out there. How do we go through it? Sometimes we feel overwhelmed by all this stuff. Well, that's part of life. But that's where you have to look at this and start doing this stuff and reacting to it and file your rights and stand up for your rights. Because once you start succeeding in that fashion, nobody's going to mess with you. See, that is the one point that when you come to reality, this is the best part about it, because now you have rights, not privileges. And that is the one thing that people need to fight for, that right. Because when you're sitting there doing a privilege, you are saying that you are a servant to your master, and basically what it comes down to is your master is the police department, the mayor, the city council, secretary of state, the state attorney general. That's the one thing. You don't be afraid to stand up to these people. Too many people are afraid. Our media mind controls you to be afraid. The radios do this, and everybody gets taught that, you shouldn't stand up. You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do that. And that is the problem that we truly have in this country today, because people are scared of their own shadow. And that's the point. How many people you know that are afraid of their own shadow when it comes down to it? How many people you know that stands up to the circumstances? Very few people do stand up in this country today. Most people are just out there for themselves. You know that. And so when it comes down to that we have to defend our families, who's going to defend the families if you don't? And see, that's the point. It's your responsibility to stand up to these circumstances. And that is the best part that we have. When it comes down to it, we have rights. So, and people say, well, the Constitution doesn't give you rights. The Constitution gives you what they call the rights of the native treaties. So now, because you have rights under the treaties, now immigrants don't have rights. And that's by state and federal law, and I've written that out. I've done that. That's why Trump's shipping home the immigrants, and everybody's whining and crying. Oh, my brother and sisters are getting shipped out, my mommy and daddy. Well, you shouldn't have came to our country and decided that you had a right to be in our country, our territory. And remember, Alaska and Hawaii is not part of the United States. Alaska is a private corporation, not even a corporation. It's no man's land. Nobody knows who owns Alaska because it can't be owned. Even when Alaska was purchased by this country from, what country is that, Russia? It was still no man's land. So that's the point, that people have got to realize what no man's land means. And so no man owns no property. I mean, I got a structure in my paperwork here on the soil I'm on. I got a part of my soil that's no man land. And so, I mean, and that's between me and my neighbor. So, I mean, that's just the way it works. And so when it comes down to protecting your children, let's look at this stuff, how we're going to do it. So file your paperwork, and then I'll get this other stuff out to the general public here so you can look at what I'm filing to make your own structures, because if you don't file your rights to own your bloodline, and remember, you cannot file and get your kid a Social Security card. Read the Social Security law. Of course, they're not going to go after anybody because they don't want to lose that income that they're making, that they're filing away and having shiny money that is going in debt notes, because when they're signing you up for a debt note, you're paying off their debts. And you're paying them off. Nobody else is paying them off. So with that, why don't we go ahead and open up the floor, see what anybody's got commentary on it. And like I said, I will get this other stuff posted to the general public. I will get some of this stuff posted up tonight on this YouTube structure, so you can actually read the stuff I brought up to you, so that way you have it for your files, save them, and always use them. Anyhow, let's go ahead and open up the floor.
All participants are unmuted.
Hey, Ed, this is Tyler Davenport, Senior Executive Producer for Alternative Public Radio International, one of your longtime friends, my friend.
Yep.
How are you doing?
Oh, doing good. Just glad to see you doing good. I'm glad to see your hopes are coming up for the week for you.
Well, if I die on the table next week with this cancer, I wanted to say that I got to be on a show where you were, for a change. You've been on many of my over 2,500 shows that I've done, and you've been on a whole lot of them. You and I go back a long way. I just wanted to thank you and honor you and say that people had better really listen to what you have to say, because I've known you for years, and you know your stuff. You do your research, you study, you read, you ponder, you think, you dig, you analyze, and you know what the hell you're talking about, and people had better really wake the hell up and listen to what you are trying to say to save this country, what's left of it, and to try to bring back some semblance of republic or some semblance of a country that we can all be proud of. And if more people would listen to you, and if more people would give you airtime, it would be wonderful.
I appreciate the kind words, and that is a point, because, you know, I mean, it took us a while because everybody likes to do the devil advocate, and it's like, you know, right now we're past that point. We can't keep going through that phase right now. If we don't protect the resources and the children, there's no future. And the resources is your water, your fish, your birds, your food resources, and people got to realize once the food resources are gone, there is nothing.
Well, you know, Ed, I've interviewed hundreds of people in my time, and I'm 63 years old, and, you know, I've been both a television producer, director, and a radio broadcasting producer for over 15 years, and the public just doesn't get it, Ed. They don't get it. They're not going to get it, and they're just not going to get it, Ed. They're not going to stand up. You and I have talked about this, and you got to keep going. I know you've got to keep going. You got to keep training. You got to keep teaching. You got to keep talking. And I do too on my show. But they're not going to do it. They're lazy. They're clueless. People are disconnected. People are afraid. fear is the name of the game, and folks are afraid of their local township, their local towns, cities, counties, states. They're scared to death of the federal government. And to be honest, most people have no clue how this overall system operates in this pseudo-democracy that we have. People just do not understand how the system operates at all. They're just totally clueless as to how this system operates because they don't study, they don't research, they don't read, and they simply just really don't care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but then when they have a problem that comes up in their life, then they want to care when their kids are taken or they get a criminal charge filed on them that ain't a criminal charge and they don't know what to do.
Yeah, I know.
You know, then everybody's panicking. You know, and then when something does happen, you know, it's too late. I mean, and you know, it's like you go back to California because they're worried about one of the dams collapsing and Oroville Dam coming down. And if that does come down, I mean, we're talking the Bay Area is going to be flooded.
Yeah.
The whole Bay Area will be under 4 feet of water, minimum.
Well, we've got the same problem here in Oregon. We've got, you know, the same exact problem with all of the dams that are being supposedly taken care of by the Corps of Engineers. But even at that, if we have that 9.5 earthquake that they're predicting, Eugene is going to be underwater along with a lot of other areas in the county are going to be underwater. And people they don't want to believe it. I've talked to the city council. I've talked to the Corps of Engineers. I've talked to several engineers I've interviewed who have said, you know, people really need to get their act together and they need to start thinking about how to handle this situation. And we're in no way prepared to handle any of this. We're in no way, no shape at all to handle what's coming down the pike. You know that. You and I both know that.
Yes. I mean, they're talking about when that does happen, the Oregon coast is going to go right off in the ocean.
Yeah.
You know, and if you're not in Salem, over to the valley, over to, you know, the east, the east, everything from Salem to the coast is supposed to just fall in the ocean.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
And that's the thing. People don't get this. They're not paying attention. And, you know, and then when things happen, it's like I always love it when people, you know, they give their rights over and then their kids get taken because, you know, somebody says you spanked your kid or something over hearsay. And it's like, it's hearsay. It's inadmissible in court. And remember, the most important thing to remember, folks, a judge, a cop, a district attorney, state attorney general, nobody could file criminal charges unless a witness has seen what happened to the injured man or woman or child.
Well, you know, the cops head are just jerking people around. I mean, let's just face it. I mean, it's a dog and pony show. It's just a dog and pony show. Every stop that they make is a dog and pony show, unless it's a major felony and there's something real going on that needs to be stopped. It's just a dog and pony show. I mean, what they're looking for is drugs. They're looking for people on probation. They're looking for people on parole that have violated their parole. They're looking for weapons, illegal weapons. You know, they're not stopping you for that tail light or that brake light that's out. That's just the shit that they use to pull you over, you know, and that's profiling.
Yeah.
That's profiling. I mean, that's profiling. I mean, even if you are a felon, you have rights. Even if you are a misdemeanor, you have rights. Even if you have broken your parole, you still have rights. If you're a criminal, you still have rights. As a matter of fact, criminals don't realize it, but they have more rights than somebody that's a non-criminal.
True statement.
If they just knew what you knew, you know, there would be a lot of people walking out of jail right now.
Well, and people don't realize that all crimes are commercialized.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're a commercial identity, so that's what they bill them off. Go ahead.
Well, I'm also really proud that you're trying to tell people, you know, what lawful and legal is. And you and I have talked about maritime law. We've talked about rule of law. We've talked about common law. We've talked about all of these things. And people really do need to try and understand the differences in these things and try to get it through their heads But most of all, they need to look at your page over there, and they need to be studying some of the documents and reports and dossiers and things that you're writing and putting out, because that can help them, and they can use that as a template to write their own original piece. And you can give them the wording and the proper pronunciations and the proper, Black's Law Dictionary, and you can give them the proper education. They can get an idea of how to write their own reports and dossiers and findings. And they really need to look at your page, and you need to really publicize that page, as I'm going to be doing on my 18 pages tonight and tomorrow.
Yeah, appreciate that. That's the whole point, that it is getting that out. Well, it's like, I've been through the similar things that not what you're going through, because at least I don't have that one. I just have kidney failure, but at least I'm not going through what you're going through in that type of surgery. So, I mean, that's the other point now. So they're protecting dialysis for you when you get out or not?
No. They're this dumbass insurance company, Trillium, is sending me home after this major surgery. They're going to cut half my lower abdomen completely out and put it back together again, and go in there and dig around and do exploratory. They're going to rip out my kidney, and these bastards are sending me home in 24 hours in my car. They won't even pay for an ambulance. I've been on the phone 3 days. They won't even pay for an ambulance to bring me home. They're making me come home in a car or a bus, Ed.
Oh, shit. Well, send me that. Monday I'll make a call, and I'll file to hold them liable, the board members.
Okay.
All right? Because, see, once the board members, this is the one thing, people, you got to realize. You're board members of these corporations. And like I said, the board members for the cities, the mayor and city council, you want to file that their houses are in their liability. See, that's the point. They're liable, and that is your responsibility. There ain't no judge. There ain't no attorney. There's nobody going to do it for you, because nobody gives a rat's ass, because they rape, rob, and pillage. That's how they make their living, by doing nothing. Literally doing nothing. Go ahead.
Get with me Monday or call me tomorrow. I'll send you my notice of liability for you to post on the wall for this gentleman.
Okay.
Okay?
No problem.
Trust me, if it gets the governor, it's going to get these people.
We know this one. See,
Can you?
Yeah, I will definitely do that. I'll get that to him as soon as you send that to me.
Can you believe? Can you guys really believe? I mean, I want you to stop and think. Can you really honestly believe that they're going to cut me halfway open, and they're going to dig deep into my body and take my kidney out, and they're going to rip these tumors out, and then they're going to put me back together again? And they've told me this is one of the most dangerous surgeries that they could possibly do, and it's going to be a complete train wreck. And then they're going to kick me out of there in 24 exact hours and make me ride a fucking bus home. Can you guys really, really fathom this? Can you comprehend this?
I can fathom, because remember, I went through the stuff with my heart shutting down and with the heart surgeries and everything I've gone through.
Let me tell you something.
Go ahead.
I know somebody who had it was either 3 or 4 bypass surgery. All right.
Yeah.
On Tuesday morning, about 11 o'clock, they were sent home Thursday.
Oh my!
Believe it or not.
Oh my God. Oh no.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the one thing. When I got out of my last one, I was sent out in 72 hours. And then I went through this one where I went through just recently, where my house was robbed when I went into ICU, and I still couldn't believe when I went into ICU, I called for an ambulance, and SWAT shows up at my door. So that tells me, I think with that last letter I sent out, that either they were protecting me or they're scared as hell.
Hey, Ed.
Yeah.
Do you guys think that I should have Mary on the phone with the CEO of Riverbend Hospital and say, look, if we don't get an ambulance for him, this hospital is going to be sued?
Well, let us get the paperwork to you first and then file the paperwork, because on the phone it's hearsay. Nobody gives a shit. It can't be used in court.
That's true. I created what is called notice of liability. I dumped this thing on the governor of the state of Florida, and the cabinet, because they are the CEOs of the corporations, DCF, and all these little agencies. They write the manual, so I sent them a notice of liability and made them liable, for their damages. I also found out the sheriff department down here, where I live at, they work under the court system. They have no obligation to you whatsoever. They operate under the court system, right? But the sheriff himself is liable for all the actions of his little corporation officers. Okay, and I'll tell you, I'm big into this corporation stuff. I go after corporations on a scale people ain't never seen.
Yep.
Well, if you can help me, I'd appreciate it. If you guys can help me with this this minor ambulance thing, send me that paper, and Ed can get it in my PM, and I'll damn sure file it, to try to get an ambulance home.
Let me put it like this. The CEOs of that corporation and the chairman of the board, they're vicariously liable, all right, for anything that's done to you that's wrong. That their agents or employees do to you, they're vicariously liable.
Right.
And they don't like it when I get shoved in their face.
Okay.
Well, that's the other point, too. I got the other paperwork, too, that you could file, because anything that happens to the patient in a hospital, the board members, and I do have that one myself, that you could write the letter, and I'll help her write it, and we'll get that done at least by Tuesday, that the board members are financially liable, and then we'll get his instrument that he's talking about. We'll combination them, and once they get it, they're going to freak the shit out, because this is the point that you want to make sure that these people realize that they are financially liable for their decisions, because they took the responsibility of that liability of that position for their income.
Let me tell you this, Ed.
Go ahead.
Get this. They're not even sending me home with a home health aide. They pretend they don't know anything about a home health aide. They pretend like, hey, well, you could just lay by yourself for fucking 3 months.
And technically, they're supposed to be sending you home with at least a CNA.
I know.
But see, this is the point that people don't get, and then they want to run around and go, I have rights, but who has rights? Where's your rights? Who gave you the rights?
Yeah.
And that's the point. Like I said, I file this stuff with all these agencies. I've been filing this stuff, as you know, even with the Cato Institute, with the Institute here in Portland and all these stuff. And all these guys literally run.
Yeah.
Because what I'm filing is I'm putting them in a financial liability.
Yeah.
And they don't want to realize that their assets are up for sale. And it's called, it's on sale, and it's on the open market called Wall Street.
Yeah, that's right. I know.
And most people don't even comprehend that everything's for sale. Even your body is for sale. That's the whole point about your birth certificate registration number.
Yeah.
And people go, well, that doesn't affect me. It's like your body is being sold on that market daily, and you don't even realize it unless you claim it. That's why. Go ahead.
What really ticks me off is, and this has happened to me recently, is people say, oh, why do you talk about all this stuff with the National Security Agency and all of this other stuff? I haven't done anything wrong for the FBI or the NSA to be interested in me. Yeah, I'm not a criminal. I haven't committed any offenses or any crimes. And I tell them it's not about that. It has nothing to do with criminal intent. It has nothing to do with you being a criminal. It has to do with spying. It has to do with information. It has to do with them wanting to know where you are, what you are, who you're with, where you bank, where you go to church, where you shop, what you're doing all the time, where you're walking, where you're doing your recreation at, what country club do you belong to. They want to know everything about your kids and what you purchase for your kids. That's what it's about. It's not about criminality.
Great. Well, that's what they put the smart meters on your home. That's why you got a chip in your credit card that can be detected by any satellite in the world.
I know.
And people go, well, I have no, like you're saying, well, what do I have to be afraid of? Well, if you do something that they decide to pick you up without a warrant, and then they throw you in jail, and then they say you don't have a right to a phone call, and trust me, I've been in Lincoln County jail where they threw me in, and I didn't get a call for 72 hours, and then when I finally got the call, they decided, oh, we're not going to let you have a call, Ed. We're just going to take you to the hospital because you're having a heart attack. Yeah. I didn't die when they expected me to die, so now all of a sudden I'm going to get medical treatment. And then when they did, and this is the thing that got to me about that whole thing, when they did is they come in, the sheriff's deputies come in, and they literally throw the paperwork and tell me I got a court date and all this at me, and I'm hooked up on an IV drip with nitrostat, and I'm looking at these guys, and they're throwing and saying, if you don't show up to court, we're going to come get you. And they did. They put a warrant out for me for 9 months. They had to hide out in the state for 9 months because they had a warrant. Basically, the warrant says to execute me. And so I got that by one of the sheriff's deputies that told me, you better go hide out because this is what it says. And so I appreciate the people that, do this. There are honorable public servants out there, and don't get us wrong. We do have a good elected and public servants out there. But you got to remember, when you got 40% of the system that's going against 60% that are good, you got to worry about that 40% who's going to stab you in the back or shoot you in the street.
Yeah.
And public employees do come up missing or, all of a sudden, they get executed or mysterious deaths. I mean, one in particular I know was Judge Scalia, because Judge Scalia was murdered, and I believe it really came down to, what is it called? That would have been Obama, because I'm the one who wrote the structure in 2013 on the Immigration Act just for Judge Scalia, because Judge Roberts asked me to send it to him.
Yeah.
So, and that's the point.
From my personal experience and people that I deal with in the broadcasting industry, that they're coming after us now for doing these talk shows and saying certain things about certain agencies and certain organizations. Now, I predicted this was going to happen about 3 years ago, and everybody said I was on drugs and I needed to take my medication.
We did the talk show on your talk show on it.
Yeah, I know. You and I predicted it a long time ago, and now it's happening all over the United States. They're busting in people's doors for their Facebook account, for what's on their Facebook account. They're busting their doors in, and they're taking them out of public parks, and they're putting handcuffs on them and throwing them in the back of a van and taking them to mental hospitals. These are 2 cases I'm working now. And
right.
The other case I worked, Ed, the one that I got the guy out of the mental institution because I called and threatened them, and he finally got out. But they had him pumped up on Thorazine and every other kind of drug, had him thrown in a room naked. They wouldn't feed him. They wouldn't let him go to the day room. I mean, we're talking Nazi Germany here. We're talking terrorism. We're talking torture, and here in the United States.
Well, people got to realize, I'll let you finish here in a minute, but people got to realize that we're actually living this structure because Johnson & Johnson Corporation is founded from Nazi Germany. They were the scientists that were doing the cloning for the Germans.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Finish what you're saying. Hope you didn't lose your thought.
No, I'm just so worried that this is coming to pass. I mean, a lot of my fellow broadcasters have got it now, and they're calling me saying, oh, my God, you're right. So-and-so just went to jail. So-and-so just went to jail. So-and-so just went to jail. And I'm like, I told you it was coming down the pike. Ed Johnston and I predicted this 3 years ago. We predicted this was going to happen, and everybody thought we were crazy. And now they're saying, oh, shit, now we can't even talk about anything on Facebook. You know, it is real. It is one of the most dangerous platforms on the planet Earth.
Yep.
Is Facebook.
Well, see, Facebook was set up for it, because, I mean, I got people all the time that email me and says, well, you agreed to the terms on Facebook because you accepted the terms when you accepted their agreement. And it's like, not exactly, because the agreement that they have on Facebook, you have no choice to accept it, so you're forced into a contract that's illegal.
Right.
You know, but see, how else do you keep contact with basically the rest of the planet? Because, I mean, I do a lot of stuff on Facebook, as you know, we do. And most people don't get it, and they put the structure up to have all this information to track us. That's like the same thing with the smart meters on your phone. You know, we're going to detect you. Your smart meters in your home. You know, there's 3 states right now that have actually, the Senate and House of their state outlawed smart meters in the home. And if anybody puts one on, whoever puts on the smart meter, mandatory, goes to jail. I would like to see that here in Oregon. But see, Kate Brown ain't going to do that. That's what I said with Kate Brown on a recall. She changed the damn numbers on this stuff. I tried to explain to even Mike, because even though me and Mike Cross have different opinion who dealing with that, because I've known Mike for years. We've been involved in other recalls myself with him, even with a couple judges and a few other things. But that's the whole point, is knowing what the circumstances are. And you try to explain this, and people are just, it becomes all about me, me, me. I've got the star, I've got the light, I'm going to prove this, I'm the one that's going to do it. And it's like, they forget it's supposed to be called we the people, not I, me, myself, and I.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, you know, we've talked about that. We've even had a couple conversations with other people on the talk shows that you've had that, you know, come in. And, you know, some of them, when they come in, I've always wondered what their mentality was.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. Me too. You know, I had that friend of mine who is an astronaut. Well, I can't say that and get in trouble. He is in the astronaut program at NASA, and he sent me a aerial photograph from 500 miles up where they did read a postage stamp from 500 miles up. They read a postage stamp. You can see it just as plain as day, and it kind of floored me. At first, I just couldn't conceive of it. I couldn't grasp it. I couldn't wrap my head around it. But the resolution on these equipment now is unbelievable. What kind of technology they're using for both listening to you and visualizing you at the same time.
Oh yeah. So hang on a minute. Let's see. Anybody else would like to add anything into this conversation? You're more than welcome. The floor is open to you.
Hey Ed.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I just got one question. I was researching some stuff and came across Title 42, 666, Section 666, and subsection C. It says that it's a notice of non-custodial parental social security account number. It says that they are allowed to give it to the state agency for child support freely.
No, they're technically not. That's an administrative rule.
Okay, so then it's still, you can still file Title 42, Section 408 about people getting your Social Security number.
Right. You still do that one because they can't give it out because they're sitting there going, well, we're a government agency. We have this authority. But see, they don't have authority without your written express permission. That's why I always suggest people to file identity theft, prove your identity theft. You know, file it, you know, because your identity was stolen when you got a driver's license. Your identity was stolen the first time you ever paid a tax bill. So your identity has been stolen more than once. When you did your water, electricity, or phone bill, when they asked you for a Social Security number or for a reference point that if you don't pay your bill, we could call a relative. And that's illegal for them to do that as well. So, yeah, no, definitely file on them on that for violating their oath of servitude.
Also, wouldn't that still be considered also fall under fraud? Because, I mean, still under the UCC codes, they didn't, they were supposed to explain all this stuff to you, whether written, video, or verbally. And there is nothing signed saying that, by you, saying that you were notified of this in the first place.
Right, but that's where you have to put it in writing stating that they didn't do this. And so by that, now you're putting a claim on them.
Okay.
Okay, and I know you have that paperwork because I sent you how to put a claim on somebody. So,
Yes.
I mean, and that's the point is that you do that because now they've violated their oath of servitude that they have to do a contract with us to know what was going on. They can't just sit there and it's like when they would take kids, you know, I mean, I dealt with hundreds of cases in the state where they would steal a kid and people would go, well, they have the right to do this. And it always amazes me, because the kid could have been in danger. And I'm like, okay, it could have been, maybe, but then again, were they endangered? Was it ever proven? And that's the point, is proving this stuff. And then they're going, well, they're doing that to protect the child. They're not doing it to protect the child. That's what amazes me, how stupid people are. And I hate to be that cynical in stating that word, but they're stupid. So when they're doing this stuff, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, because a lot of people don't stop and think that, as you've said time and time again, there has to be an affidavit filed by the living person or man.
Man or woman, person does not exist.
I know, it's a corporation. But it has to be, and if you check, just like I did, I checked in my records, and there is no affidavit. And so everything is presumption. So then they had nothing to stand on in the first place. And there's a lot of these court cases that they have foobarred, so much so that we could basically go back and fix it easily because they're not following the process that they wrote, and now we're bringing it back on them. And that's what they're scared of. They're seeing that, oh, crap, these people actually found something, and we didn't follow this process. And I think it was you that turned around and said something about a lawyer didn't know something and was surprised. I think it was about picking a jury or something like that.
Right.
And you said, yeah, there's a book even on that. And they're like, oh, really? We just been doing it this way. Which is a lot of it, like I said before, people, they do not read. All we have to do is pick up their slack by reading what they've written, and we can beat them with it.
That's the whole point. They wrote it, we quote it. And they don't like it when you put that in their face. That is the one thing, they don't want it in their face. I mean, that's like, the Clintons getting away with all their stuff. And now it's starting to be posted up on the internet. I see on Facebook, which everybody knew about the Clinton Chronicles 15 years ago. But now they're starting to put up some of the stuff with Hillary on the Clinton Chronicles. And it's like, okay, I'm sort of shocked some of it's making it on Facebook, especially, with the guy who runs Facebook, goes after them. And like I said, I send my stuff out like the Lars Larson talk show. Lars runs for me. A lot of these radio stations and TV stations, they literally run for me because they know I'm telling the truth, and I've even paid for advertising in their newspapers and stuff that even, 2014, I ran advertising in the state papers dealing with the Queen of England stamp on the Constitution in 1993 that to prove that this is not her stamp, her signature in the National Archives. And the House and Senate, I filed it with the Oregon State House and Senate, and it says that we, the people, have rights. We're not a British colony. And I always get upset when these people say, we're a British colony, and it's like, no, you don't get it. We've never been a British colony. We have contracts with the British government called the federal government, and each state does have that, but we're not supposed to pay taxes. And then people say, well, how do we pay for the roads and highways and the service? Well, you pay for the roads called tax and your gas and your water. You pay for the roads when you buy a spark plug. You buy a vacuum line for a vehicle. covered wagon, anything that you purchase in that industry, there's a 2% tax to a 7% tax on everything that is purchased. And then don't forget, you've got the state and the city taxes and everything else included on that. So the average person or the average man or woman, what you're paying for when you pay tax, you're paying 35 cents on the dollar straight off the bat in taxes.
And if they also do some research, they'll actually find out before anybody starts paying taxes. I can't remember which president it was, but actually there was a surplus of money, and nobody was paying taxes then.
Oh, yeah. No, it was a surplus, and that goes back all the way through to 1900s. And then when they put the Federal Reserve notes in, that surplus, because remember, the original banks had to deal with gold, silver, and it was a greenback paper that was backed by gold and silver. And people say, well, your gold and silver is backed by the de facto dollar. You go into a bank and you ask them to get 10 pounds of gold with your de facto notes. You're lucky if you get gold dollar bills or gold coins or even silver coins in a bank today without going to a jeweler to get gold anymore. It just stuns me when people put this stuff out on Facebook and the internet and trying to throw people off saying, you could do this and you could do that. And it's like, go try to do it. I want to see you do it. Don't sit there and go by somebody's opinion. That's like when people go by the opinion of, well, the school says you need to have your kids vaccinated. And it's like, okay, so I want you to sign the liability if my kid gets any type of medical problems out of it, you're liable with your home and assets. You're going to see that every public employee runs from that. So, and I've dealt with literally numerous cases on the West Coast and some in the Midwest on it, and it's like, just file on them, and then they freak out because then they have to be liable with their assets. No nurse and doctors are going to do that. That's why when I started doing this stuff on the birth certificate, the doctors were just handing the birth certificates over to people and said, oh, you have so many days to register this with the federal government. And then they're out of it. They already told you what to do. Now they're not liable. And that's what even Oregon state law says. I have that on the birth certificate registration. All the states do. That you have 45 days to register that child with the state. Because if you do register that child with the state, that's called abandonment property or abandoned vehicle or vessel. So you gave your assets, your child, over the state. That's how they create a birth certificate bond, and that's what's filed with the Secretary of State under the business registration licenses.
Hey,
go ahead.
Does anybody here have any expertise with expungements on records of criminal intent? I have a really good friend of mine who is looking to get an expungement off of his record, have something expunged that happened in 1988. He was railroaded. He got a call from a couple of his detective friends who said, you have a warrant out for your arrest. And he said, for what? And they said, child molestation. And he said, what the hell are you talking about? And they said, well, this woman that you made us acquainted with, and we know this woman that you moved in with for a couple of weeks because you wouldn't marry her. She's a gold digger, and she wants your property and she wants your money. And because you wouldn't marry her, she said you stuck your little finger in her little girl's 2-year-old's vagina 1/4 of an inch. Okay, what else happened? Well, they said that he stuck his finger in the little 2-year-old's vagina 1/4 of an inch. Okay, well, I'll just come turn myself in and we'll explain this thing out. Okay, so he turns himself in and they slam the door behind him there for a minute, make him sign this sheet of paper, one sheet of notebook paper as to what happened. Well, he was giving the little girl a bath. He did give her one bath while he was there. And he did babysit with her a couple of days, and he did dry her off, and he did touch her little popo while drying her off. That's the closest he ever got to her vagina. Okay, so now we wait 2 years to take this thing to court while the whole time he's suffering post-traumatic stress disorder. And his mother's dying in the hospital, one of the greatest guys in the world. He waits 2 years. He decides to go before the judge instead of a jury. And a hanging judge, Judge Hampton, Jack Hampton, 303rd Court, Dallas, Texas, says, okay, approach the bench, 1 year probation, get out of here, see you later. And he goes, what did you just say? He said 1 year probation, no supervision, get out of here. He said, well, wait a minute, where's the person that accused me of this crime and the little girl, and where's the forensic psychologist and all the other people? He said, did you hear what I said? 1 year.
Didn't he comprehend? He signed a confession.
1 year probation, no supervision. Get out of here. Hit the street. Wait a minute. The girl recanted her story the very next day. He still got child molestation on his record for the rest of his natural life with a okay. Now, he wants to get this expunged because it's hurting his life in many different areas of the political arena that he's trying to work in. Attorneys want $10,000 for an expungement case. $10,000. Now, I was going to ask you, I was listening to you guys talk a while ago. If there was any mistakes made during that course of that little 30-minute trial in front of the judge, if there was any mistakes that you guys know of in these statutes and ordinances and rule of law and all this other bullshit that were made, wouldn't that bring an expungement pretty much automatically if this went back to court to get an expungement?
No, because you just said that he signed a piece of paper, and basically what it comes down to is that he signed what they call a confession.
He wrote out.
Yes, I heard what you said to the system and to a judge and to a cop and how they could play it to a jury. That was a confession.
There was nothing in there about putting.
It doesn't matter. You said he dried her off. That's a confession. He touched her. That's a confession. That's the way they read it. That's the way they'll play it to a jury.
I see.
That's the one thing people don't realize when you go in and they say, sign this. The people go, I'm signing it. And they go, okay, you can leave now. And then you wonder why 3, 4, 5, or 6 years later, or even 4 months later, you're picked up on a warrant for something that doesn't exist technically. And you're like, what? And they're like, well, you signed a confession here. And they're going, well, that's not a confession. That's not what my intent was. That's not what I was explaining what I'm doing. Well, see, that's the whole point.
So he couldn't challenge.
Go ahead.
No, so he couldn't challenge the court on the fact that the girl mother did not show up, the little girl did not show up. There was no forensic analysis done whatsoever. There was no investigation done whatsoever. There were no witnesses whatsoever, and there were a lot of other mistakes made in this particular case.
Right, but he's got to refile that to go back after it because see what he did when he signed that paper. He signed a confession.
Well, that's beside the point.
That's not beside the point because that's the way the system looks at it.
Well, we're not talking about the system here. We're talking about Ed Johnston's system here.
No, we're talking a legal system because that's what any judge, any attorney, when they're talking expungement, we're going to charge you $10,000 because we got to go through this channel. Basically, we got to bribe this part off. We got to pay that part off. Because, see, I mean, the expungement part is that he has to write the affidavit and prove it with the witnesses in that circumstances.
Well, he got railroaded to shit and back is all I know. And I think something ought to be done about it. And I didn't know how to approach it. So I thought I would ask you if there
there's ways of going at it. But he's got to reproduce stuff and, and then go after the public servant that told him to sign this piece of paper at a threat because the guy had a gun on him, technically. If he didn't sign this, we're going to do this, that, and the other thing. So he's doing it out of fear.
Yeah.
And there are cases in administrative rules on that. So, but I mean, you know, it's just that's the one thing I always suggest to people: do not sign anything. You know, I mean, I've been hauled off to jail here in Lincoln County several times, and then they're going, well, you need to sign this before you get released. And I said, and I've had the jailers look at me literally and say, do you want to sign this, Ed? And I said, yeah, I'm not signing this release and agreeing to these terms. And they say, open the gate for him. And then I got it on videotape where Judge Bradford goes to me, you didn't sign the paperwork I told you to sign the way I wanted you to sign. That's his quote right in court. And then, you know, then I'm getting arrested, and next thing you know, I got $75,000 bail on me because I didn't sign a paper, and $75,000 bail usually is when somebody does something criminal on somebody that breaks their jaw, you know, hurts them physically.
Right.
You know, but I mean, he's doing this to punish me, to keep me in, to shut me up because of the paperwork I've been filing in his court. Because, see, when I filed the other paperwork I did on him in court, when they sent me the papers that they stole out of my house, the police department stole, because I had him admitting in court, which I have some of it on the computer, but the other paperwork, he admitted to fraud in the structure. He admitted to it in the paperwork I had. So, and they knew it because they went through the court paperwork, because I've been going after Lincoln County because I've been trying to get their court administrative rules. I've been trying to get the court paperwork of the structure where a court has to be under, mission statement of the court. You know, and I've been trying to get the mission statement from the court for years, and now they're telling me, well, you have to go to the state because we're under the state. Because, see, we never even had a courthouse in our county until 1993. So nobody had a hunting, fishing license, driving, and all that because they weren't going to haul you to Salem for something like your rights. And I know I dealt with it. Go ahead.
It just pisses me off that so many hundreds of thousands of people are being railroaded because of the lack of proper legal counsel, and they're not getting to understand all these documents.
It's not American. Legal is a foreign corporation.
Lawful, whatever. You know what I mean. You know what
I mean. I know. I got you.
Yeah, they're not getting the proper representation and the proper advice, proper counseling that they need, and they're not filing the proper documents they need to file, and they're not doing the proper things they need to do, and they're being railroaded. And our jails are full of folks like that, besides folks that smoked a blunt and got given 20 years for smoking a fucking blunt. I mean, our jails are so full of people that don't need to be there. It's unfrickin' believable.
80% of the jails are filled with people that shouldn't be even in jail. That's a fact.
I know, and it just really pisses me off to no end.
But here's another point. You could always serve your state representative. People don't get this one. But you can serve your state representative to represent you in court. Yeah. By law, he has to represent you in court. Your state representative is supposed to represent you. Oh, they don't want you to know this one. But if you file on him, he has to go to court for you. He has to represent your straw man. They don't want you to know that.
I bet that would go over like a popcorn fart in a church.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, sometimes a popcorn fart does go to church. It cleans out the church.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, and then when you file on these representatives, you know, they freak out. I mean, I've even got Arnie Roblin and my representative Dave Goomberg, whatever you want to say his name is, you know, tell me, well, if you want to do this, you're going to have to take us to court. And so now I'm filing on them because now they've committed racketeering, fraud, and treason, and I can prove it because they're covering up the criminal activities that they've been involved with on me. And I've even got him on video admitting to it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and that's the point, getting it through. And so when you file your complaints, you always file in criminal charges, because everybody says, oh, file a complaint, but a complaint is a whiner. They go look at a complaint and say, well, I handled it, and then I just filed it in a round file, and it's handled. But when you file the criminal charges on these people, they have to look at it. They have to, you know, represent that criminal charge.
I wish my dream would be, my request would be that everything that you are saying and have said for the last 10 years could be put down in such a way that would be so user-friendly a 14-year-old could understand it and be able to follow A through Z. and be able to work on these different types of cases and be able to read and study and understand how to file the certain documents that need to be filed and the reason why they need to be filed and in what courts they need to be filed in and why, and the who, all these different things. The problem with you, Ed, and the problem with people like you is your information is so spread out and so scattered and so difficult to understand and comprehend and grasp and wrap your head around. These shows are wonderful and they sound powerful at the moment, but they go right over people's heads. They go right through people like a ghost.
Yep.
And, it needs to be information that is easily understandable, and it needs to be categorized. It needs to be focused, it needs to be targeted, and it needs to be user-friendly, and it needs to be in a language that everyone can understand. And this is the problem that I see with you, and this is the problem that I see with people like you who I know on the internet who do similar shows.
Yep.
And this has always been my problem. This has always been my complaint, and you know it. For the last 10
you've
years,
been vocal.
This has been my complaint, that we don't have a place where people can go and get this kind of information, as I said, in an easily accessible, very focused, targeted manner, A through Z.
No, I get you on that one. Been trying to work on that one, but it's the way it comes off. I mean, it's like I just went through a conversation with a couple people week before last, and it's like, can you read the stuff I sent you? Yes, we read it. Can you comprehend and understand what it says? Yes. Okay, and then it's like, well, how do we do it? And I said, you read the instructions. See, that's the point. I put some of this stuff in instructions of doing this, and when you do it, it's like, you and I both know, and so does the other guy from Florida. We know this, that how mentally controlled people are, how they've been so programmed by the media by certain key words that fuck up their minds. And that goes back because the CIA was doing that back in 1946, and they had the program installed in 1950.
Yeah.
And that was done on the radio waves and the TV, the local TVs, and people didn't comprehend that. I mean, when the TV used to go off at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, they used to play the national anthem with the flag flying.
Mm-hmm.
How many people remember that one when the TVs used to shut down at night and they used to play the national anthem as a closing ceremony for the station?
Yeah, I remember that.
So that is the point that we're living, and people go, well, we got all these, I mean, right now, what do we got? 200,000 TV stations, YouTube channels, all this stuff out there. Everybody's throwing information out, but everybody's talking about it, but they're not showing or representing of how to solve the problem.
Tell me about this epidemic, plea bargaining, this epidemic that we have of plea bargaining. Tell me how this has come to where it is today and why we should have more jury trials, and why are we not having more jury trials, and how can we change this? How can we turn this situation around?
Well, that's one thing that gets to me, because I don't know if you remember the J. Smith accidental shooting or murder trial in Portland in 1988, where they found the kid's body shoved in the back of a garage for a week. That's the one thing that I will never forget, because I lived it, because it was my brother-in-law. And it was like, so they did the deal where, okay, we're going to eliminate the juries because we want to have a judge decide this. That's how Measure 11 came in place. So the Measure 11 decides the criminal charges. So they put all these once on a criminal charge of what manslaughter was, assault was. I mean, we're still living that today in Oregon. That's what amazes me. And people go, well, I'll sign this complaint. They say they have this on me, so I might not win in a jury trial. But see, the one thing is, you're not going to win in a jury trial if they have elected and public servants or contractors on that jury. So you have to have a jury that is impartial, and that means you have to file on the jury and the judge and everything a mission statement. You have to conflict of interest statement. You have to file on them because they're all making a living off it. Even the juries that are public employees, they're paid on the salary as they're in the jury, because you go to a jury, you don't get paid. But a public employee gets paid because they call that holiday pay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and that's the thing that gets us, because when people go to these juries and they think they're going to get a, honest jury, that's why I always suggest to people, file a conflict of interest statement immediately on that jury. Because you want to know if that jury is lawful or legal. And you'll find out most of those juries are legal, what they call legal citizens. And so technically legal citizens cannot be on a jury, and that's by the 1863 jury administrative rules.
Yeah.
But that's the point that, like I said, it takes the time to read all this stuff, go through it, which I've done, and we've had many conversations over the years on that. But that's the point that, reading this stuff, taking it to heart, because I get all these people say, well, you can go with your birth certificate and you can get a house and you get money off it. Well, you do that, you go to jail. Because the birth certificate insurance bond is supposed to cover your water, electricity, your basic housing expenses. That's it. It doesn't cover a Mercedes-Benz. And I watch these people all the time putting this stuff out in these paperwork, and they sell these programs to people for $200 to $300, $1,500, and then people end up in jail, and it's like, you committed federal fraud.
Yeah.
Read the structure when you do your your filing for your birth certificate. You see, you can file to claim your structure. I've done it. I own me. And that's the other point that freaks them out, because, I got my stuff filed with the Secretary of State, the State Attorney General. Come after me. Come after me. I was like I told Kate, last time. Because one of her administrators said that they were going to do this, that, and the other thing. And I said, fine, come after me. Let's go have a jury trial. And they're like, oh, no, we don't want a jury trial. And I said, yes, we're going to have a jury trial, but it's going to be in Washington, D.C. And that's what I just filed on them. And they're like, what? And it's like, that's the whole point. You don't want to go to the court or the system in your community or your state when it comes down to it, because you're going in front of the people that are making a living off of your straw man account.
Yeah.
The jails, and even when they do phone calls in jail, technically they're supposed to have free phones, but then they're billing us for the phones because the jail gets 25% of the take of the phone calls that are coming in and out of jail.
Millions of dollars are going into the
God, yes. Oh, yes. And they get a percentage of all this. And don't forget, when they give you commissary, they're getting a percentage off the commissary that they're buying for themselves and their structure, and then they're selling it to you, so they're getting 100% of profit.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, and then when you go to jail, they give you these little fluffy pens and, that don't do anything, and you can barely write, and you're allowed 3 pieces of paper they give you, 1 envelope and 1 stamp. And, of course, you can't seal the envelope because they have to read the information or your letter before you send it out, because who knows what you might put in it.
Yeah.
It's just, and it's amazing that our court system and jails are running the same thing as the Christian Crusades did with the witch trials in Salem back in 1100. It hasn't changed. And the jails used to have TVs and used to have space, and today, now most of the jails are solitary confinement with no TV, no radio, nothing, and you're in a concrete block looking at the walls.
Except our sheriff's department in Eugene has made some very positive changes, and they're starting to allow the prisoners to come out in general population for the first time now. This has been going on for a year, and it's worked out rather well. It's worked out excellent, as a matter of fact.
Actually,
the sheriff
that's
up
good
there,
to hear, to tell you the truth.
He has allowed the most violent offenders to come out and play dominoes and checkers with each other, and he's created a real social unity and fellowship among the inmates there in Eugene. And I really praise him for this, and I hope they continue that program.
I'm glad to hear that, because I filed on Katz. What the hell was the mayor's name back then? I think she's not the mayor anymore. She was there for years in the city council. I filed on them a couple years back for racketeering, fraud, and treasons, and I still have some of those emails that I sent them, because when they arrested me, because they found me in Eugene when they were hunting me down. And that was interesting. How they found me is that my dog was in a car. They said it was 90-degree day. The windows were down, but some woman called the police on my dog because the windows were down and she was panting. And I just walked in to the building, which I should have took my dog at the time, but I didn't do it at the time. That's my deal. But I mean, that's why my dog goes everywhere with me, including the emergency room. At least the hospital, I got to say, has been working wonderful with my animal. And of course they're doing that more today than they used to do that before.
Yeah, they are.
Because it comes down to it's a service dog. When you're disabled, you don't have to have service paper to register your dog as a service dog. People don't read the law. They just do what they're told.
Right.
So, when I went through all that back then, I filed paperwork on the city and county because when they arrested me, I started having another heart attack when they did that because of the stress and everything. 9 months I've been, basically, keeping my head out of the deal. And that's when the lumber company blew up in Eugene. I don't know if you remember that or not.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
I was in the hotel just on the other side of that building when it blew up.
Damn. I wasn't too far from there.
So, I felt the compression. You can feel the wave coming through the building.
Yeah. I was there after the fact, about 8 hours after the fact.
Oh, I was there watching it when it happened, during and after.
Tell you, this jail situation is taking a turn. Also, they've got a new mental health program here in Eugene. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a new mental health court that's fairly new and shiny. Just came out of the box, and a lot of folks are being diverted through the mental health court now, and that seems to be working out real well. And I'm sure it's a financial boon for Lane County mental health as well. I'm sure that they're getting a golden goose from that.
Oh, yeah, they're billing everything off of the strawman account. Absolutely a golden goose.
They've got a social worker now on staff that they rotate out of the Sheriff's Department and PD that go in there and evaluate the prisoners, each one of them, to see if they're qualified for the mental health transfer program. So they're getting a lot of people out of jail that way and running them through Lane County, making them go to group therapy and psychiatrists.
Well, that's like the basic thing is going that, you're going to sign a confession. And people don't realize when you do that, you're claiming, because when you do mental health, that means you have no rights. You give your rights over the state, so you give a doctor, and if they give you prescriptions, you're really fucked because that says that you're unstable.
Well, I'm very unstable then. I'm about 8 pills unstable. But the fact is, my old homicide days, Ed, killed me and drove me fucking nuts, and
I comprehend that because you were a little deeper than I was because I did something similar. I was in an EMT and did the other stuff you did. I definitely was involved in shootouts and bloody shit and all that.
My undercover work, did me in. 3 years of deep undercover work did me in mentally.
Oh, yeah, that would do it.
Funeral business, working as a paramedic, ACLS paramedic, stabbings and shootings and car wrecks, one after the other. You did me in, and then autopsy, working in forensic science and homicide and autopsies, cutting people up, did me in. So I really got fucked. And, if it wasn't for these 8 pharmaceutical psychotropics I was on right now, I'd be under a table crying right now instead of talking to you here on air. So Big Pharma does do some good, my friend, and we've talked about that before, you and I.
Oh, yeah, no, that's a case-by-case circumstances. It's like me, I'm lucky I never went down that road, but the other point that I do is I'm not into horror flicks or all that stuff because I've already, like you, we've been in the blood and guts and glory.
Right.
So, that's the one thing that I'm not into, watching those type of things, because I lived it. I don't have to watch it. I don't have to go to somebody that has to know what it feels like or create an emotion feeling for it, because I already had it. Like you know exactly what I mean.
Yeah, it separates us from the pack, too, of people where we just can't be around a whole lot of people because it's on our mind constantly, like a vet coming back from the front lines of Iraq or
Oh,
Iran
yeah.
or Syria. Stays on my mind constantly, and I can't just be around anybody. They have to be certain kind of persons, certain kind of people that I can be around for any extended period of time. You know? And most vets are like that, and most people that have worked undercover like me are like that.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so these psychotropics do help me to get out in the world and socialize a little bit and want to laugh a little bit and have a little good time. I even went to sing some karaoke the other night. And so for the first time, you know, I don't drink, don't do drugs, don't do any of that shit. And, you know, for the first time I had a whiskey sour. Woo, wow, wham, bam. You know, I had a Jack Daniels because the whiskey sour wasn't worth a shit and she didn't know how to make them. So I ordered I just said, give me a damn Jack Daniels and Coke. And that was good. And I sang about 4 songs and went home about 11:30. And I had a good time. You know, it's the first time I've been out in hell. Like you, I've been stuck in the damn house for eons, you know, doing my research. You and I are homebodies, you know. We're both homebodies.
Oh, yeah, and I am, unfortunately, because I'd love to be out doing a little more traveling and getting back out with the people. But, see, they had to keep me out because people started paying attention when I was talking out when I was getting into public.
Yeah, me too.
You know, so, and people are paying attention, and so they didn't want the truth to be known, especially with the police departments, what they can and cannot do.
If I go to a party, I usually end up having cops follow me home. If I'm at the party more than 3 hours, I usually have a tail on me.
Yeah.
You know, they're always. I tell you what. You know what's interesting is cops won't stop me now, Ed, and that means I have you know what that means? That means I have an ongoing case. They're compiling information. They won't stop me for nothing. They won't stop me for nothing. I could piss out the window and they wouldn't pull me over.
Yep.
And it's probably the same with you if you were driving a lot. They wouldn't pull you over. They got a case against you. They want to gather evidence on my talk shows. They want to gather more and more evidence, you know, about what we're getting, and you know, all the FBI agents I hang around with, and former Central Intelligence agents I hang around with, and Department of Justice I hang around with, and federal United States attorneys I hang around with. So, and all the stuff that I'm into in Mexico with the sex trade and trying to bust some of these bastards in Portland. So they're wanting to know what I got. They want my information.
Oh, yeah. I know that one.
You know, yeah. And you and I both have handled the FBI cases before, and they've told us to go jump in the frickin' river. And, you know, it's...
Yeah, they wouldn't even give us a life jacket. They even float.
I know. I've handed over 3 major cases. One was Medicaid fraud, and they told me to just go jump in the lake, you know. And they want to take the credit for everything. I already had all the dossiers, all the reports. I had all the undercover work done, and they want to step in and take all the credit for everything. You know, after you've done all the dirty work, they want to come in and step in and take all the credit. So, those bastards are. They're media hounds. You know, they're media hounds.
Well, that's why I started filing my cases. And see, every time that I do anything, when I put out my cases, even the one I just did, I always make sure that the Portland FBI, the major FBI in Washington, D.C. gets it, and all the United States Marshals gets it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the funniest thing, because I went through a phase, because, you know, I don't like to get into my past, but, you know, like I said, I was going into law enforcement, and so when I would bring up the Marshals, everybody would panic because of, you know, I mean, they tried to put me in prison and use me as a fall guy back in '85, and then they realized I wasn't the fall guy.
Yeah.
That's what scared everybody, you know, because it was like, hey, and that's why I tell everybody, put a contract together. Because even if you do marriage, and I do recommend people do not do a state marriage license, ever. You do a written contract between you and your woman, or I hate to say the other point, your partner, if you want to go that way. Yeah. But, and you got to remember, that's your Constitution right by the treaties. All right, the gay and lesbian stuff, when everybody keeps getting on this stuff that we have rights, no, you don't have rights unless you have a contract. Yeah. You know, and that's the one thing that when they keep going that, oh, I have a gay or lesbian and they were in the hospital and I couldn't visit them, you didn't have a contract with them.
Well, or a power of attorney, medical power of attorney, mental health power of attorney, which is what Marion's got. I had to do all of my end-of-life paperwork, which, you know how long that takes, the damn pile of that shit here. But I got it all done, and they have accepted it, and they have copies scanned into all of the hospitals and local clinics around Eugene and Lane County, and beyond. And so I'm protected. Thank goodness I'm protected, and so well protected that their hair was curly when they saw all that damn paperwork coming in. They didn't really want to see it coming in. There was so much of it.
Well, that's
but
what I did.
I got it done.
I publicized mine.
Yeah.
All right, that's what freaked them out
Facebook.
because I don't have to name it in the public of who, what, why, and how, but it's publicized so they know that if something happens to me, they know somebody will come forward.
I got it on Facebook Live. It's on Facebook Live. I've got it on video and text.
Yep.
And they can't jack with me. It's been shared too many damn times. It's there forever, and there's nobody going to take it away. And
but
you
see,
know how bad it is.
Valid point.
What?
So you brought up a valid point, bringing it out, making sure it's publicized, so that way nobody could challenge it. Because if they challenge it, they got to challenge you when you're alive. They can't challenge it afterwards.
Right.
And that's where people don't comprehend when you're doing the stuff like you're doing and what I've done is that they have to challenge it while you're alive. Like I said, I've been filing the paperwork on the police department stuff. Now, when I'm dead, that is sealed, and then that way it goes into investigation, and they know it.
Yeah, me too.
But see, I can't tell you how many public employees in the last couple of years that have literally retired or moved out of the state, and a few of them that collect their retirement and literally moved out of the country.
Yeah.
You know, because they know once it comes down, and if they're in a country where they're not going to deport them under the contracts, you know, of interstate agreements, you know, they might have a chance. But then again, I have to rely on basically what they call that, the conscience of our servicemen and women, because, you know, it's like these preachers that keep raping children, and they show up hung or their throat slitting out or stuff, and people go, what? And it's like, you got to realize there are people out there, people don't realize the song, The Saints Go Marching Home. What that song was really about when that happened with King John and the Pope back in 1213.
Yeah, I know. And the Irish picked it up, too. The Irish picked it up.
Yeah, and the Irish started running with it, and they still run that today, and that's even running their own bars today.
Yeah, I know. I just worked a case. Man, it's amazing. How synchronistic is that? There was actually a couple of guys called the Saints in Ireland, and they picked up on the mob and the Russian mob and the Mexican mob, and they started killing these guys. And they were good little Catholic boys, Irishmen, and they started killing these mobsters. And this FBI agent from the task force was sent in to try and discover who these killers were. And as the story goes, as he went along and found out who they were killing and what these convicts had done, these criminals had done,
they let them go.
He went to the Catholic Church and confessed to the preacher, the priest, and asked him, "What should I do, Father?" And he said, "Well, are these men innocent or guilty of life?" He said, "They're guilty, Father. They're killers." And he said, "Well, you'll have to just leave that between you and God," which meant go on and leave the killers alone.
And actually, now, you've seen the movie The Saints, haven't you?
The Boondock Saints.
You know that's based on what you said that's a real fact that still goes on today?
The Boondock Saints.
I know.
That's what it's called, is The Boondock Saints. It's a great, 2 movies actually now.
Yeah,
it is. Go ahead. On truth. That's all based on truth, and that's all based on facts. And they didn't twist the facts very much in Boondocks. They didn't twist the facts and turn them around like they normally do. There was a lot of truth to all of that movie.
Well, that's why I always tell people that, I look at it, when it comes down to it, it's based on your bloodline. How far does your bloodline go back? Who does it trace to? What's your heritage?
Hey, Ed, what is your opinion on vigilantism? You guys, I ask all of you. What is your gut opinion?
I wouldn't even know what that word means because I don't do vigilantism or know anything about it. I just know that what needs to be done has to be done, and what's equal is equal.
I got you. I don't have to ask you anymore on that particular
You just said it by the 2 movies you brought up.
subject. I have no more questions, Your Honor.
So, and see, this is the point that, we do have a future. I love it. You got it. This is the one thing that in our future, see, this is the point is, now we got these public servants that are running rogue. Now they're starting to be dealt with, and everybody's freaking out because executive order that Trump just put in, if anybody paid attention to executive order in the last week he just put in, if you are a public servant and caught in treason, it's the death penalty.
Well, let me ask you this, Ted. Why can't we have a rogue Central Intelligence agent and say an Interpol
We
guy
do, but it can't be public.
No. I'm talking about why can't we have a couple of these guys go rogue, a couple of these special ops guys that have been through the special ops. Why can't we have them go rogue and just have them start doing a few assassinations of these corrupt criminals in Washington and just go down the line, make a list?
Well, we see that. What do you think really happened to McCain?
Well,
I mean, come on. Anybody who knows the truth, when he came out and said that these 2 soldiers were his witnesses in Vietnam, and the both soldiers came out publicly and said, John wasn't there with us. John was a guy that took credit for something he wasn't involved in.
he was at the bar.
You got it, and there's a lot of things that's going on now. I'm surprised that realistically the Clintons are still in existence, but then again, everybody goes, they're clones or whatever. But no, it comes down to it's like, what is that? The one guy that was supposedly hung himself in jail. The rapist that everybody knew. Epstein. Now, see, there's only 2 choices that really happened with Epstein. The one I sort of might think about, because I think they shipped him off back to his island. They told him if he leaves his island, he'll be executed because they got bombs pointed at his island. Okay, but he was supposed to make financial amends to people. That's why certain things are going on where people are getting gifts and they don't know where it's coming from. And
Ed, let me tell you this. You guys better listen to this because I've got some inside information, but I'm just going to say this. The Jeffrey Epstein case was one of the most powerful, historically amazing, powerful stories that have ever existed besides the McCarthy hearings and besides the Warren Commission and besides Watergate.
Yeah, we're going to get into Watergate because that comes down to Hillary Clinton when she lost her bar license.
Yeah, but Jeffrey Epstein story was one of the most powerful stories in American history. And it faded off the radar within 3 days. It faded off the radar in a week. It faded off the radar in 2 weeks. In 3 weeks, it was gone. One of the most powerful men in history was Jeffrey Epstein. One of the most richest men in history was Jeffrey Epstein. One of the most connected and resourceful men in history was Jeffrey Epstein. He had more shit on more people than anybody in American history has ever had.
Well, not only that, he videotaped everybody on his island.
Yes. He has everybody out there sucking dick and doing it doggy style with little kids and people running around naked, playing with little girls. He has it all. Every room was rigged. I got this from a friend of mine. I can't talk about it because he's friend of Bill Clinton's and he used to run card titles for him and wash them. I'm sure you knew that Bill Clinton washed card titles forever when he was doing cocaine in Arkansas. But
oh, come on. I knew that. How do you think I knew that back in the 80s when I got set up?
I'm personal friends now, and I'm going to make you acquainted with this guy who was there and watched Hillary doing pornography.
What's going on? What's the beeping going on right now?
I don't know. In Arkansas, anyway.
That's from his side. I mean, there's something.
Epstein. Yeah, it's me. It's me. I'm back.
Hang on a second. Say that again. What's the beeping for?
I walked too far away from my microphone.
Oh.
I walked too far away from my main Wi-Fi. But anyway, I'm so surprised. I'm so surprised Epstein died. Epstein case died. I'm so surprised the Epstein case died. We have no journalist in this country anymore. We have no investigative journalist in this country anymore.
I know.
With a budget. With a budget. With a budget.
Well, I told everybody at the time when all that was going down and he's going to disappear, and everybody's like, "What are you talking about?" And it's like, it's in the cards. Can't you see that? You know, that's what stuns me, how people can see what was in front of their face. And you know how that one works. We've both been there.
Yes. I know.
So, I mean, and that was doomed to happen. And then supposedly, how the hell do you hang yourself when you have 24-hour surveillance and 24-hour three guards on you?
I know.
But one of those guards was not an actual guard.
Right.
Well, that's true. That came out after the fact. So that's what I'm saying. Is see, people don't realize how.
Well, we still have no body. We still have no body. We still have no autopsy report.
What does that tell you?
Well, it tells me from a former funeral director and homicide, working around homicide and dealing with forensic science, it tells me that we've got some real shit going on here. And it's real corrupt shit.
Yeah, you can definitely say that. You know, it's like, who's paying off this? Who's bribing this? Who's doing that? You know, that's the one thing that people are not paying attention what's really going on around us.
You know, and the thing where people say, oh, Hillary Clinton could have never been involved in child porn. Oh, my gosh, what's wrong with you? Are you insane? Are you crazy?
What the hell do people think Watergate was about?
My friend went down to Bill's and lived there and stayed there and played golf and swam in the pool and swam in the lake and went hunting with Bill and all of the Secret Service guys and all of the state troopers that worked for him. And they were all in on the deal. They had a movie studio out back of the mansion, and they were doing child porn out there. My friend went and saw it. My friend went and smoked cigars, went and smoked pot, went and snorted cocaine while they were washing 400 and 500 car titles at a time. Bill was making a killing on washing car titles and making a killing on cocaine and making a killing on marijuana.
Well, wasn't that his planes that they were flying in and out of the governor's airport?
Yeah.
That were full of cocaine? And only, and I mean, there was people like me back in the 80s who knew this shit was going on.
There wasn't a damn thing you could do about it.
Well, no, nobody could do anything about it. That's how I ended up being in the position I was in, because I was an honest servant, and then I found out, oh shit, was I wrong? But I'm not going to sell my soul to the company store.
Yeah.
You know, because all those cops that were involved with Bill Clinton, just in the last 15 years, except for 4 of them, are dead.
Yeah, I know.
You know, and there's been 7 of them that went up in car bombings that never even made the media.
I got listed as a terrorist here in Oregon for trying to interview the nuclear physicist that was working on some projects at the Pentagon and NASA and MIT. I tried to slip in to get an interview with him. Marion was taking care of him, personal assistant. I'm talking too much here.
Right, I know what you mean.
But before he died, I tried to sneak into his room and get an interview with him. His wife was his gatekeeper and protector, and she called the police, and they tried to have me arrested, and they put me under a terrorist. I'm listed as a terrorist here in Oregon now in that particular location for trying to interview him.
Yeah, but see, you can file on that one because that's called hearsay evidence. Yeah. And if you read the terrorism law that says they have to have evidence, and that includes recording devices to prove it.
Yeah, I know.
So
I don't want to fuck with that one anymore. It's too dangerous. He was.
Well, I know that. Look what I'm
shit.
fucking with, and I'm still grateful.
Yeah, this guy was into some heavy CIA shit, and I got away from it. Put it behind me. It was 3 years ago.
Oh, I know. Oh, yeah. Okay.
It was up on Fox Hollow. If that makes any rings a bell.
We don't have to go any further.
Yeah, it was on Fox Hollow.
I mean, you do comprehend. I'm not, I do have some knowledge. I'm not just the guy in the back street all the time.
Oh, I know that, my friend. That's why I respect you so much and love you so much and honor you so much. And
that's what I say. People, write your contracts, do this, file your paperwork. And basically, when you do it, let them go fight their battles when it comes down to it. So long as that you're walking, talking, and not involved. Now, when they come fuck with you, then you roll the bull out and start stabbing them with the bullhorn. And I don't mean the speaker bullhorn, because if you fuck with the bull, you get the horn. But, I don't know, what some famous general said that too. So, I mean, and that's the point, people. You've got to start looking at how to protect your family, your bloodline, okay? And when it comes down to it, when you file your criminal complaints, you have to file them. You have to certify them. You have to sign them in blood ink, technically, or red pen. But most of my paperwork I have actually done in blood. So that way, that goes back to the structure of 1100, and that goes back to when they used to use the ring for their seal, and their seal had to include the blood in that seal, or else it wasn't them. And believe me, back in the 11th century, they could tell whose blood it was. And people say they didn't have this shit back then. They had more than what people realize. We are out of date in so many things compared to what was going on back then. I mean, it's bad enough we had the shitty toilets running down the street, and remember we flushing the piss and shit right through the street. Of course, we do that today, but we have pipelines now.
Ed, I would love to get you, and I'm going to do this if I survive this surgery next week. I want to get you with some whistleblower attorneys. I want to get you with some Top Gun attorneys, and mine were the best in the world. Haynes and Boone. I'll go ahead and mention them. I don't give a shit. Who knows it? Fuck them. Mine were the best in the world, and I had the best attorneys in the world, in the world. And Haynes and Boone, God bless them. May they live forever and ever and ever. They pulled me out of so much undercover shit. They got me out of so much trouble. It was just amazing what deposition schools they put me through. And they got me out of all my undercover mess when we got sued for $20 million when I was undercover with Governor Ann Richards. I got busted undercover by our perps. One of our agents went rogue and tried to get $10,000 cash payoff for giving them all of my reports and dossiers on the undercover investigation for 3 years. Mm-hmm. And that's when they sued the governor and myself. And, of course, the governor's immune. And Dr. Ron Anderson, they sued him. And they sued Catherine Bates with United People for Better Nursing Home Care. At the time I was investigating Medicare, Medicaid fraud in the billions, and Nigerian companies that were coming in here to the United States, opening up home health care agencies and billing dead people.
Yeah,
I'm talking about a lot of dead people, Ed, who are talking millions of dollars worth of bills for dead people. And they were getting by with it. With the FBI, they were getting by with it. The FBI turned a blind eye to my case reports. Trust me, I know how that one works, and I've dealt with that one myself. Yeah. I mean, I even had the FBI here 2006. The FBI was having conversations with the city council, and even once in a public meeting at the city council about me. All right? I mean, because I brought them down here. I filed all this paperwork, proved the fraud, the racketeering, and all the shit going on with the funding the money to. And, I get it, I've been there, lived it. I mean, you can type in FBI Toledo, Oregon. You might be amazed what you come up with. Well, you've got, how hard it is to get in the FBI. I don't have to tell you there's 800 applications to every one person who might possibly make the
qualify
period, And the FBI has got 3 tiers to it. It's got your basic newbies, your basic probies that come in, and they do their little probie work. And then you've got your mid-level FBI agents who aren't field agents. They just work mostly office and computers and so forth and so on. Then you've got your third level FBI agents who are in the field. Then you've got your special ops tactical forces FBI agents who you really don't want to fuck with.
And don't forget, you got your black shadow ones that nobody knows who the fuck they are until they sneak up on you.
Yeah, you got your dark state, black ops FBI too. But the FBI are a bunch of dicks. The FBI are a bunch of dicks, and they cannot be trusted, Ed. They cannot be trusted around the corner. Not around the corner.
Well, I know that. I even emailed to the director of FBI and the director of marshals in Washington, D.C. what I do. And yes, I do have their emails, and yes, I will not give them out.
Right.
But it's like the thing is that, you know, they know what's going on, but you got to remember, everybody's caught in the middle of some way in the place of life.
Now, they're not exempt from killing people, but the FBI is not. They're not exempt from it, but they're not into killing people.
No public employee is exempt from criminal harm to anybody.
But they're not. I'm saying the FBI is not into assassinations. That's not their game plan. They run everything through the Central Intelligence Agency, and they have a real hate-love relationship with the CIA. And the CIA handles all of their dirty work for them, and you've known this.
Yeah, we
years.
learned that from Snowden.
Yeah. But the FBI are dicks. I'll never trust them again under any. I
never trust them. But see, that's the one thing that I still appreciate, and I don't care what you think about Russia, folks. But Snowden is still in Russia, and you got to admit that everybody keeps going, well, you know, with Trump and all this shit. You got to remember, you have to work with your country. It's like Trump, for the first time, has a contract with China. Never been done before in the world history.
I know. You're right.
And people go, well, what do you mean? And it's like, realize, learn what the structure is, because when Trump pulled out of the United Nations, instead of having the United Nations run us under the British military administrative rules called Article 1 Court, and Nazi Germany, because Nazi Germany still exists today. It's a shadow government.
Oh yeah. Well, full time, go. Dark state, yeah. And, the mafia, we don't even want to get into the mafia. Ed and I can talk about the mafia all day long. You know, people think the mafia are non-existent now. They think the mafia has just completely
gone. It's like they saying the Crips and the Bloods don't exist. Why do you think they did a truce?
Yeah, I know. The Russian mob has so much power here, it's unbelievable. You know, the Russian mob came to the United States, and they were going to try to work with China on some things, and the Italians went to Russia, and they were going to take over the black market in Russia, and they were going to work with the Soviets. Well, guess what? That didn't work out too fucking well, because the Russians didn't trust the Italians. So the Russians decided to send the KGB to where? The United States of America, Incorporated. Mm-hmm. And now we have one of the largest Russian crime syndicates in the world right here in the United States.
Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah. And they're ruthless, Ed. They're ruthless.
Yeah, I know. You know, and see, it's like when I grew up in San Francisco, you know, when everybody was talking, you know, in the 60s and 70s, as you go certain areas, even with the Black Panthers, you're going to get shot, you're going to get murdered. I grew up with these people.
I grew up with the Black Panthers, remember? I grew up with the Black Panthers, yeah.
You know, all you had to do was simple. You stayed off the turf you didn't get to fuck with.
We used to have parties, man. We used to have some of the greatest damn parties.
Yeah, I've been there too.
Unbelievable. And they just loved me to death because I played both sides of the fence and I knew what was going on all sides of the fence.
I got to tell you a story. I was hired to go down to Watts down in L.A. Now, if you're white, you don't walk into a bar in Watts.
Oh, hell no.
I did a couple times. And I had the look, people, you got to comprehend what it's like. And the look, and so I come up to the biggest son of a bitch and I say, here's who I am, this is what I'm going to do, this is who I'm looking for. Are you going to help me or do I take out your knee? What are you, fucking crazy? And I said, oh yeah, I am. Why do you think I'm talking to you? Why do you think I came in here? You think I'm stupid to come in here without being crazy?
Yeah, you remember You remember that time I told you I was in South America working just right after the Contras and the Sandinistas, and Oliver North was into all his shit, and that program carried on under a different name.
I know, but I still couldn't believe that everybody backed Oliver North, and they spent $2 million on his security for his home to cover up with the country.
I was down there working with a special ops team on some surveillance, and got caught in the midst of a storm there between two cartels, and I ended up in a meat freezer, with all these big mobsters down there in the cartel, and to get out of it, I had to shoot somebody. And the head Don down there handed me a gun and a weapon, and said, "Go ahead and shoot this guy that's standing on the left side of me to prove you're not an agent. Shoot him in the head."
Mm-hmm.
And I hesitated. I told you about this. I hesitated for about, 60 seconds or so, and I figured, you know what? If I hesitate 68 seconds, I'm going to be fucked. And I shot him in the head. I killed him. And you know what the Don said? You know what the Don said to me? He said, "That was my nephew."
Mm-hmm.
He said, "You've proven to me that you're not an agent. We're going to let you out of here with your head."
Mm-hmm.
And I got away. Can you imagine what would have happened if I hadn't killed that guy?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. See, people don't... That's why people don't... You don't get involved in this shit. You don't cross these lines. Because if you cross these lines, you got to remember, you're putting your life and your family on the line.
Yeah, I know. I put mine on the line several times, and I shouldn't have.
Well, that's why I know. But see, I would never sell my sold the company store. That's what always pissed people off. Because I would go after, when somebody told me to put me in that position, I would go after the guy who put me in that position.
Well, the reason I got out, Ed, is because we had too many double agents, and I couldn't handle it anymore. You never knew who you were working with. Whatever agency would come in, there would always be a double agent involved. There would always be somebody working both sides of the
fence. Sort of sounds like the Senate and House.
Couldn't trust your own partner anymore.
Sounds like the Senate and House. You couldn't trust your own secretary or your aide because you didn't know who was on the take.
I know.
That's the same thing goes on right now. That's why we're having problems with the Senate and House of Oregon. You know, that's why I still can't believe that they're trying to say that they were short on the recall. And I do give Mike's, me and Mike have had our differences in the past. Okay? I've known Mike Cross for years. We've had our differences in the past, but, proving his point, he came out, he's made amends, he's looking at things. And so I give him that credit. But now he needs to file up on that recall, and I need to try to get a hold of him to know him how to do that, because he files up on that recall the way it needs to be done. The recall was already done. He won the recall.
Well,
State Brown should be on the ballot this November to be outed out, and federal charges should be on her. And I know, I wrote the federal charges on her that are in Washington, D.C. right now today on her.
Yeah, I know. I know you did. I saw them. How many Democrats do you think have infiltrated the Republican administration all the way up to the president's office? I've got
60% right now.
I've got good contacts, and that say that he's got a lot of rogue agents working inside the administration.
And that's what people don't realize. When he had to fire his own lawyers that weren't registered under the 1938 Foreign Registration Act. People don't comprehend why that act was put in place and before World War II, the end of it and the structure of it.
How bad do you
that
think
goes back to everyone wants to give Winston Churchill some credit, and Winston Churchill was a spy for the British government. Plus, he was paid off by the Russians.
Yeah, I know that too. How bad do you think this is going to hurt the Trump campaign in 2020 as far as all of these moles?
It ain't going to hurt it because the Democrats are fighting each other now, and that's the beauty of it. Because remember, I'm waiting for Maxine Waters to come out with something. I filed on Maxine.
She's
her staff was telling me, well, it doesn't matter what you filed. And I said, well, it does because I filed on it. Now, Newsom for the state of California is the nephew of Pelosi.
Maxine Waters and Pelosi both have Alzheimer's. Ed, they're getting sick.
We know that. Even Feinstein does. We have that
Maxine
with
Waters. Maxine
Barbara
Waters.
Boxer. That's why Boxer was forced out of office.
Maxine Waters and Pelosi both, half the time, they don't even know what state they're in when they're speaking. They have to look at their teleprompter.
Mm-hmm.
They don't even know where the hell they are. I don't know how.
Well, I know that.
I don't even know how.
You can see in Nancy's eyes she's lost.
Yeah, I know.
You know, and that's the one thing that people don't realize. I go back with Nancy Pelosi back to the 70s because when they put the deadbeat dad bill in that she put in, me and my brother and sister were the poster child for it.
Well, she's the one that's pushing this indictment to get Trump excommunicated.
Well, they got to push it because the point is to see, once Trump wins the election in 2020, the Democratic Party is out. So it goes back to neutral parties.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no Republican Democratic Party after that. So that means the NRC and the DNC, they can't collect fundraising anymore because they don't exist.
How many years, Ed, do you think it's going to take before they start taking a third party seriously in this country?
Once Trump is elected the second time, yes, because everybody's terrified that we're going to be with a new king. And Trump doesn't give a fuck about that position. He's already got his position in life.
Yeah, I know.
You know, and then they want to put the pictures up with him with Epstein in the 70s and 80s. Trump was with everybody because what was he? I'm a millionaire. Well, at that time, he wasn't quite a billionaire. But, you know, I'm kissing everybody's ass. That's how I'm getting my money.
He's worth over he has $135 billion worth of local properties that are direct to him, and then he has over $1.8 billion in properties that are indirect to him, and he has another $4.2 billion properties that he has control over. His resume, I've looked at it on charts. It's just unbelievable what this guy owns.
Well, it amuses me when people go, he doesn't pay taxes. It's like, how many people are that stupid? Have you ever read the tax code, people? No, you don't even know what the fucking tax code is. You don't pay taxes. It's voluntary.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, that's why I'm filing property tax right now, because it's voluntary. I've proven it. So you don't have to pay property tax, state income tax, or federal taxes, because what does it do? It goes to the British government, and I've already proven it. 60% of every dollar that is spent in taxes goes to the Queen of England and divided with the Vatican. 40% might stay in the local structure of your nonprofit agency because they write it off to the Vatican. So they're getting triple drubbits in their financial. You know exactly what I mean. And people don't get the reality that, you know, there's 3 bank accounts when they run this stuff. It's not like you in your home, you got 1 bank account. Even when you got a business, you still got 1 bank account tied to you. People don't get it. They don't comprehend the reality of what they're living.
I finally found the key letter that turns the IRS off and turns them away from you, and I've got it under lock and key here. I was going to send you a copy of it, and I'll get around to it.
No, you can send it to me because I've got the same thing. I mean, when the IRS came after me in '93...
Well, I finally found the right letter. Finally found the right letter after years of looking. Finally got the right letter that.
I got to see that. I just wrote them a letter and said, "Prove my contract."
Yeah. Well, this one just shuts them down immediately. I'll send it to you tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, because the one I did when I filed in 1993 against the state and federal IRS, I said, "Prove the contract that I have with you," because I never filed taxes. So if somebody put me into taxes, I want to know who did it, so I go after them for federal fraud. And I got a letter of apology from the federal IRS, Department of Justice, and I got a letter of apology from Oregon State Department of Justice.
Yeah.
That was in '93, and everybody's like, what? And I said, you know, I'm not out there with my flag on the street corner going, hello. I don't want people to know this shit because I like living.
Right.
You know, and people don't realize how those things really do affect, but all you have to do is say, it's like a mortgage. If they sell your mortgage, all right, they have no wet ink contract because you never agreed to the new mortgage contract, so you own your property, guaranteed. That's all written off in the House Resolution 192. It's written in the Administrative Codes. I posted it up on the website.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's like that's what I said, And people say, "Well, I can go buy a house. I can do this." No, you cannot. You only can do your basic utilities, water, and electricity. I mean, the other part of the fantasy people are living, but they get taught about the birth certificate is that yes, it's written off as $630,000, but that's for your water, your electricity, your basic bills. That's why when I go in the hospital, everybody keeps going, "Well, we need this information from you." I said, "I'm under duress. You wouldn't want me to commit a crime, would you?" Exactly what I said. When I was in the ambulance last week for Friday, they bring out this paperwork. They want me to sign this thing as I've got lights going on. I'm being hauled to the hospital with emergency lights and sirens and everything going on with the police department following me, too. I always thought that was cute. Actually, it wasn't the police. It was the sheriff's department following the ambulance to make sure I got there. I thought that was interesting. But they're like, "We want you to sign this." And I said, "You wouldn't want me to sign this under duress. I'm having a heart attack. Isn't that a crime?"
Right.
And you know how fast these people turned around and said, they didn't say a word. They just threw that thing in the corner and nothing was said.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, and that's the point. If you know your rights, you don't argue with them about your rights because they know it. They're not going to fight with you so long as you keep your mouth shut. You're not on the street corner waving a flag.
Right.
When you wave a flag, you're bringing the problems to you. That's like when people are on the street corner yelling, "Oh, Jesus Christ," and then they wonder why they're being arrested by the cops. Hey, Jesus Christ, you can't talk about technically. Look at the administrative rules. Look at Christianity, the laws of the structure of the church.
Ed, I'm going to leave you all tonight, and I want to thank you again for all the work that you've done all these years, and I want to thank you so much for everything that you are and who you are, and I want to thank you for being so respectful. I taught you that, but I won't tell anybody. But,
we only had a few battles over the last 10 years, huh?
Well, that's something I take credit for, is calming you down, and I take full credit for that. I guess that's the only thing I can take credit for, is calming you down and teaching you how to be on air without getting kicked off air. You've become so respectful, and I admire you for that, man. I admire you for that. I really do, and keep up the good work no matter what, Ed. And if I don't make it through this surgery, I'll see you in the next life, and you keep up the good work. And everybody that's on here tonight, I love you. I appreciate you, all the work that you're doing.
Don't worry, I'll be talking to you Saturday because you need a couple of days to get your sanity. And your lady's going to take care of you through the point. So,
yes,
we'll talk when you get out of it. You're just going to be in a fucking hell of a lot of pain. Just make sure they give you the good stuff.
Oh, I will. I'll get some Dilaudid or some oxycodone.
I hate to say it, but one of the two.
Demerol is good for me. Demerol is my favorite drug of choice. You give me 75 of Demerol, and I wouldn't care if World War IV was flying over my head. I'd be waving
I know what that means, too. I've been on that one like that.
I'd be waving at them, asking them if they wanted to land and have a tuna fish sandwich. I mean, 75 of Demerol is just, oh, my God, ladies and gentlemen, Demerol. I love y'all. I'll see you. Ed, I love all of you, and I appreciate you letting me take the time to be on air tonight, to your host and to you and to everyone else involved in this broadcasting network. Y'all take care, and remember, whatever you vividly imagine, ardently desire.
And don't forget to bring up your radio channel and your numbers when you leave, because when you come back next week, you're going to be in pain, but you're going to need to have some people call you up and say, "Hey, you're in pain. Let's have a drink."
And enthusiastically act upon will come to pass. I am Kyler Davenport, Kiler. You can Google me and see where we've been. Kiler, Kyler Davenport, Davenport, Senior Executive Producer and on-air host at Alternative Public Radio International. The station's going back up 20 hours after I get out of the hospital. If I make it home, I'm reopening. I know Ed will be glad to hear I'm going back in 24 countries, 28 countries. I'm opening Sam Broadcaster back up, and we're going 24 hours. And
I'll be looking at that. I want an hour slot somewhere.
You got it. It's all yours, Ed. It's all yours, baby. And your guy here, too, and anybody else that you recommend. So until next time, Davenport, and I'm out of here. May the force be with you all. If I come back, I come back. If I don't, I'll see you in the next life. Bye-bye.
Yeah, we're going to see you anyways. I'll talk to you Saturday. You have a good one. We'll talk to you then.
Thanks, Ed. Bye.
You know. Anyhow, I would like to thank everybody for letting us go and yak over these things. Anybody else would like to add anything tonight? No response.
I think they're
Okay,
afraid,
well, go ahead.
I think they're afraid the Russian mafia will go after him after that talk.
I'm still here, so anyhow, yeah, I comprehend that one. So anyhow, no, it was good. I was glad to have him on the show. This is the one thing that comes out because I've argued with this man for many, many years with him and a lot of people on international radio and stuff on the circumstances of what I brought forward, how to file yourself, how to do this. I've had people come after me telling me I was crazy. I've been through the other circumstances, and I'm still here. So the point being is that you can't be afraid of shadows. The shadow knows, but you know the shadow. You have to know the shadow. That's why the shadow knows. So if nobody's else got a comment tonight, and we ran a little bit over normally, because normally maximum is about 2 hours we go, and I appreciate the host that is doing this and letting it go tonight. If anybody's got a comment, please bring it up now. Okay, with that, we'll let the Great Spirit and Mother Earth provide and feed you, take care of you, and without the Creator, none of us exist. Because I can sit there and look at the soil, I can taste the soil, I can taste the deer meat, I can taste the salmon, I can smell the air, even though with the mill I live near. Okay, that's the whole point, is smell, taste, and see. You know you're alive. With that, may the Creator bless you, and we'll catch up with you later, and travel safe.
All right. Well, thank you for listening to Disclaimers by Ed Johnston. Now, earlier in the show, there was some scrolling text going, and if you want to, re-watch the video, and it talks about how codes and statutes are not law. There are court cases, there's even Supreme Court cases in there that actually flat out state that statute, codes, and administrative rules are for the corporation and corporate entities, not for the living man. Read it, learn it, and if you ever have a statute
and the corporation is you by your birth certificate bond. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Also claim yourself as a living man or woman, and then you won't be a corporation by their standards anymore.
Correct. And do not file your child with the state. File it as your personal property. Own your bloodline.
Yep, and with that
most people don't get it. Go ahead.
With that point, even if you've made the mistake, as I have done, where you did get a birth certificate and social security for your children, you can still do an affidavit and claim that child, and if it's unrebutted after 30 days, guess what? Nobody's going to claim ownership of your child with that affidavit.
That's a fact, and not only that, with your child, if the state uses that information, that's a federal crime, and we've had that posted up on the wall. I put that out too. And so this is the point, is you're not there to go fight and argue with your public servants. All you do is prove your case. They say yes, you go on. You don't need to be on the street corner with the banner, because you got to remember, there are a lot of people that are illegal or immigrants in this country. Illegal and immigrants have no rights to food, water, and air. Okay, I hate to say it that way, folks, but if you don't feed your children, you have no children. And so you got to remember, in their country, they don't give a shit because they're going to take you out. Because it's all about survival of the fittest. And that's where we're living right now today. And that's why when I've got this other paperwork, and I've done the other one that I did on the nonprofit agencies, and you'll see this other one I'm getting ready to put out, you know, that's the point, that if we don't do this stuff to protect the bloodline in our country, there's no future. It's like Kate Brown. She legally was recalled. And I know I legally filed the paperwork, lawfully filed the paperwork on her in 2017 before Mike filed his petition on her. And see, that's what shocked the hell out of me, because I was filing this stuff, and then everybody else started coming after me because, oh shit, we can't let him do it. And I've been doing this shit for 20 years in the state. I mean, I met a lot of these people way back when. I used to go to their homes. I used to cook for them, too. Some of them I literally cooked for them, because I used to be a chef. So it was like, hey, we're going to do this. And I said, all right, there's 50 people. Let's make a party. This is what I need. I can whip it together in 2 to 3 hours. And in 2 to 3 hours, I can feed 50 people, 100 people with no problem, banquet style in a sense. So, I mean, it's those things that you can do. And, I mean, my best order, I did 1,100 from dinner one night, from 5 to 11:30 one night. I did 1,100 orders in a restaurant myself. So, I mean, it's like paying attention. You can do these things. And trust me, when I did 1,100 orders that night, I didn't even know how many I did. And then when the night happened and they said close, of course I went to the bar. I got 4 shots of rum right then, because I was in a hell of a lot of pain, because I still was dealing with a broken neck and all the other stuff. And so, and that's the one thing, is I do respect the public service back then. Because the public service, they knew people. They weren't sitting there pulling you over and harassing you for a bank account number. And when you give them your bank account number, that's your Social Security, or even your bank account number for your bank, that's a federal crime. So that's the whole point, is learning what the law is, not statute codes and administrative rule. When somebody says, it's like mommy and daddy says, you need a driver's license. Prove the law. I put up the stuff with the hunting and fishing license. You don't need a fishing license so long as you're fishing in the river, streams, and the high tide water. It's the law. It's already there. I mean, I used to fish in California and Oregon coast, and everybody says, you need a fishing license. I said, and the Oregon State and California synopsis until 1982 used to state you didn't need a fishing license. Yes, I used to state it. I used to save all those books. I had all those books until the Toledo Police Department robbed my house and took all that stuff out, because they knew I had this shit. You see, they're trying to change the history. They're trying to make it so that way you're a servant to the British government called your religious beliefs. The Constitution gives you a religious right to believe. My belief of religion is the Constitution and the native treaties. Without the native treaties, the Constitution has no meat. With that, may you folks, the Great Spirit bless you, and travel safely.
Okay, we'll try this again. So I'll just state the date, which is October 19th, 2019. It is a Saturday. And the show, disclaimers by Ed Johnson. Thank you for watching. And thank you for our guests that have shown up and talked. And with that, I'm going to close out unless Ed wants to go on another 10-minute tirade again. So we'll see you next week, and hopefully we'll hear good news from the guest that was here earlier. And with that, good night, everybody, and see you next week.